Okay. What's not mysterious is what's been going on when it comes to retirement.
Yeah, this is a great story. It's today's big take. It's the first in a four-part series on the offshoring of American retirement savings. As Apollo reinvents how Wall Street handles insurance and pension funds, firms are shepherding hundreds of billions of dollars to Bermuda entities that lose U.S. protections while making opaque, complex bets. We've got Alex Rajbandari here. Thank you. Okay, I got it right. Okay. Yeah. He's Bloomberg News U.S. insurance reporter. He joins us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. This is a fascinating story. It centers around a man named Bill Schoen, who worked nearly 4 decades at a mill near Pittsburgh, and his pension. Explain what happened to Bill Schoen's pension that got him and some of his coworkers to then hire this team of lawyers.
Sure. Traditionally, when you work for a company, then there's a pension fund that a company manages for retirement of retirees, right? And he was getting those checks from the company, his former employer. Mm-hmm. But after a while, a couple of years ago, he received a letter saying that those checks were coming from Athene, which is a company that is owned by Apollo. So then they started to gather together among retirees of the same company to understand what was going on with their 1.5 billion pension. And they realized that it had been transferred to Athene. That is actually a very common transaction now in America. Corporations don't want to have the hassle to manage those assets for retirees. So they just sell them, basically, to life insurers to manage it in their place.
So who is Athene? So what do we need to know about Athene?
Athene is a life insurance company.
Did I say it right?
Yes, yeah. Athene, yeah. And it is owned by Apollo Global Management.
It was a big deal when they bought it a few years ago, post-pandemic.
That's right.
Yeah. And they merged it together, right? Yeah. So now there's the alternative asset management arm of Apollo, and there's the life insurance management arm. Those two entities are really complementary in many ways. The assets of the life insurance arm are basically driven towards the products that Apollo create with their private credit origination, private equity, and stuff. So that's the narrative for Apollo, is that it's a win-win because the insurer gets higher yields investing in more liquid products, and at the same time, Athene gets a lot of cash coming from their life insurance company.
Did Bill Schoen see this as his pension being treated in assets that were riskier than what he thought?
So that's the whole question. And when you have a pension fund, basically the fund needs to fill the closing gap every year. There's like a responsibility to give the checks. When it goes to the life insurance company, all the assets are pooled within the life insurance company's assets. Athene keeps them in a separate account, but still all the pension risk transfer deals, that's what they're called, go in the same account. So for Schoen, the problem was it's riskier because Athene has more of a tendency to increase allocations to private credit and all CLOs and structured products.
Yeah, this is a no troll zone.
There's money, their retirement money might,
all trolls must exit.
But if Athene reaps more benefits from these investments, those checks are not going to increase. So that's why they decided to hire lawyers to try to unwind the transaction.
What's their concern here? I mean, has his pension payments stopped?
No, they haven't, and that's why in the court proceedings, it was said that at some point the checks are still coming. So there's an expert that said that there's no. Yeah, there are mixed rulings on the problem, though. There are some other rulings for other pension plans where it's proceeding and it's an appeal, because the argument behind it is that there is no backstop. I mean, the backstop with a pension fund is federal. It's the PPGC. It covers all payments for retirees when, there's a problem with a pension fund. It covers it could pay up more than $1 million over a lifetime for someone who retires.
So there's guarantees, you're saying, that are, for so many of the pension funds that are in the United States, there are guarantees.
Yeah.
Government oversight and government guarantees if something goes wrong.
Exactly. When it goes to the life insurance sector, however, insurance in America is regulated state by state.
Right.
And the guarantee associations that will take over the payments if there's a problem with a life insurance company, this is capped. Typically, it's $250,000, and that's a fixed amount for a lifetime income. So that's way lower.
So you may have put more in.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no guarantee.
What power does Schoen and
What's up,
his
G-Boo?
former colleagues, actually have to unwind a transaction such as this?
That the court will decide. For now,
How you
I
doing?
mean, look, I'm not a lawyer. I was shocked that he's even trying this, though. Does he want to unwind? He doesn't want to unwind the Apollo transaction. He wants to unwind the transaction of his pension going to the firm.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
In big picture, though, I mean, this is part of a big series about the fate of retirement assets in the U.S. What's the
Trying to get my
So what Athene did, what Apollo did with Athene, a lot
my
of
laptop's up and
asset
running.
managers have been doing. They've been buying a lot of life insurance across the United States with the same strategy in mind, which is also kind of similar to what Warren Buffett did with Berkshire, buy like the big flows and invest it in their own products, right? The thing is, there's also another layer of complexity that is added to that, is that insurers take insurance for insurers, that's called reinsurance. That is mostly offshore, it's not in the United States, and the leading destination for that is Bermuda, because it's a global market for insurance. That's what it is. That's a specialty of the island. There's a lot of capital flowing in to take that risk. What is concerning for a lot of observers and also for Sean and their lawyers is that, the capital rules in Bermuda are a bit lower than the ones that are in effect in the US. There's less disclosures. You don't have the same visibility and the same granularity when it comes to investment.
We got the lap running here.
Than you do in the US.
Hence why they're based there.
Yes, exactly. That raises a question, because what happens if the company in Bermuda runs into trouble, it's offshore, it raises just a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty, and that's the last word you want to hear when you think about your retirement.
No, it's like, kind of wild, right? Like you're expecting certain guarantees, especially in a world where, it's either 401ks or for those who still have like those, that's your retirement. It's not like people are getting a lot of different areas. Has anything though gone wrong yet?
No, that's the thing. The life insurance sector has this narrative that, it's a very stable sector, very staid, and there hasn't been a lot of...
Yeah, we got the
Right. But the thing is, all those...
got the crayons out.
...is a well-regulated jurisdiction, and it's well by the U.S. regulators. However, there are other offshore jurisdictions that are, gaining traction. I'm thinking of the Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
And these are also raising some other kind of questions.
Well, it's also transparency, right? So that you understand exactly where the money is.
Yeah.
Alex Rajbandari, Bloomberg News U.S. insurance reporter. Alex, part of the team that handled this big take. Check it out on the Bloomberg terminal. It's among the most read stories. It's the offshoring of America's retirement savings. Once again, it's the first in a 4-part series on the offshoring of American retirement savings.
As we go to a break, we just want to mention the New York Times crossing the Bloomberg terminal with a story. Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani said he hoped to press President Trump to help ease the affordability crisis. The mayor-elect of New York City saying today that his team had reached out to White House officials to set up a meeting with President Trump one day after the president mentioned the possibility to reporters. So as the sun gets ready to set here in New York City, looks like there might be some communication between the two. This is Bloomberg.
Coming up next on a Bloomberg Business Week Daily, we've got a great interview. Christina Stembel stops by. She's founder and CEO of Farmville.
Where is the gray? I have the gray color here somewhere.
So breaking news out of Washington.
Oh, there's the gray.
The White House announces a reduction in tariffs.
The conversation about affordability is getting louder, and Bloomberg 1130 has the experts to bring you every angle. Saudi prince visiting Washington. The Senate is heading for a health care vote next month.
And we got the colored pens here.
House Speaker Mike Johnson joins us now.
Listen on Apple CarPlay or Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app, and always on Bloomberg 1130. Context changes everything.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Entertainment Report. The Red Hot Chili Peppers are finalizing an agreement to sell their recorded music catalog to Warner Music Group in a deal that values the masters at $300 to $325 million.
From my understanding and my reporting, there are actually people who think that they could have paid even more for this.
That's Bloomberg's Lucas Shaw, author of the Screen Time newsletter.
I know of at least a couple of buyers who tried to get in the process, but the Chili's have been making music at Warner Records, formerly Warner Brothers Records, for 30 plus years. They're signing a new record deal, I believe, and so as part of this process, they're also going to sell their catalog, and I think it makes sense for them to do a deal with the company that they've been working with for so long.
The Chili Peppers have been releasing music at Warner Records since 1991's Blood Sugar Sex Magic. Shaw says the deal could still fall apart and may not close for another couple of months. Here in Moscow, Bloomberg Radio.
This is a troll-free zone. There's no trolling on this channel.
Q4 2025, an IBKR forecast trader, the yes was recently at 6%, and the no.
So be warned, there's no trolling on this channel.
On future events like climate, the economy, or politics. Pick yes or no, and if you're right, you earn $1. Forecast contracts are not suitable for all investors. Make your prediction. Go to ibkr.com/forecast and start predicting today. Last trading day for this contract is March 26, 2026.
Working as a dedicated Fidelity advisor, I always ask, what's important to you? I'll look at those priorities and goals alongside your full financial picture to build a comprehensive plan designed to help grow and protect your wealth. With proactive portfolio insights and an eye on taxes, I'm here to help you make the most of your money. I'm Laura Maxwell, and I'm a dedicated Fidelity advisor. Learn more at fidelity.com/wealth. Investment minimums apply. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Clear skies tonight with diminishing winds, low 30 to 35. Some morning sun and increasing afternoon clouds on Tuesday, high only 45 to 50. Mostly cloudy, some showers around Tuesday night, low in the middle to upper 30s, a little cooler in the suburbs. Morning clouds and becoming partly sunny on Wednesday, high again 45 to 50. I'm Scott Kaplan with your 3-day forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Coming up next on Bloomberg Business Week Daily, she is back. We're talking about Christina Stenbol. She is the boss of all things Farm Girl Flowers. She kind of does it all, too. Started years ago. Now it's big.
It's 4:21 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long. Here at Bloomberg, stocks lower across the board. This Bloomberg Business Flash is brought to you by Oracle. Attention growing businesses. Oracle's offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure for new Equest customers with minimum financial commitments. See if your company qualifies at oracle.com/Bloomberg. Traders gearing up for NVIDIA's earnings on Wednesday and the jobs report later in the week. We're shunning riskier assets today as both events will be key in shaping the global financial outlook throughout the rest of 2025. S&P 500 index fell almost 1% today. We had the S&P 500 index declining by 61 points, finishing the session 66.72. The Dow down 557 points, down 1.2%. Nasdaq down.
Did you finish eating, Jibu?
Of 0.8%. The 10-year at 4.13%, with the 2-year 3.60%. Gold down $39 the ounce at $4,044, down 1%. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.6%. WTI, by the way, now at $59.70 a barrel. Bitcoin now down 2%. Bitcoin with a $91,000 handle. Bitcoin at $91,561. Chevron said to be studying options to buy global assets of sanctioned Russian oil firm Lukoil. Now, this is according to Reuters, citing sources. Chevron today down by 1.8%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, thanks so much for that update, Charlie. Appreciate it. Well, this week was always going to be crucial for the stock market with the AI behemoth NVIDIA due to report earnings. But with results from a slew of major retailers also hitting the next few days have become critical to traders who are looking for a view on the health of the consumer and the economy. Carol, we're going to hear from Home Depot, Lowe's, Klarna, Target, Walmart, and Gap, among others.
Yeah, the health of the consumer is so important. It's the backbone of the U.S. economy. We've increasingly talked about the K-shaped economy and really how it pertains to consumers. That consumers, the wealthier consumer seems to be out there still shopping, not so much for those who are feeling the pinch.
The health of the consumer is something we always focus on with Christina Stenbol. She's the founder and CEO of Farm Girl Flowers. She bootstrapped the company starting back in 2010, making bouquets from her San Francisco apartment. The company has grown a lot since then. She's here with us in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. 15 years.
Yeah, 15 years.
It's been a wild ride. I mean, we get to check in with you every few months, and it's great. And a big part of your story is how you grew so quickly, and you actually acknowledged that you grew too fast, and you said, well, we got to put the brakes on this thing. and kind of get smaller. But one thing that I was really surprised to hear from you is that this year is going to be your most profitable year, even if it's not going to be your biggest revenue year.
Hey, Jibu.
I'm not sure that we're actually seeing any growth since 2020, but very small.
Jibu.
And that's very intentional. We're really focused on the bottom line. We want to make sure all these companies are doing layoffs. I want to make sure we're not that. We have, I don't know, 10 or 12 open positions right now, which for a company our size.
What's your favorite color?
At a clip that we can do while maintaining.
I got 24 colors.
We're about 35 million.
And I got extra colors on the pens. But what's your favorite color?
Like a third of your positions are open right now. Are you having trouble finding those employees?
We're just going slow. We're looking for the right people.
I got 24 colors here.
Making sure we're bringing the right people. Yeah, I think I've learned that having the wrong people is actually worse than just not having anyone. So that's a lesson. It is a good lesson. So in terms of 15 years, tell us about how you look back at the beginning and where you were and some of the stages you've gone through and then where you are today. Yeah, I just sat down and wrote 15 lessons in 15 years. I might share them at the end of the year. I was just trying to think about
what's your favorite color, Jibu?
I feel much healthier right now, personally and professionally. And why do I feel that way? And I think the biggest lesson that I had written down was that nothing is as it seems. When I started, I wanted that founder story in Silicon Valley. I started in San Francisco. I wanted to be the cover of Inc. or Entrepreneur, one of the big magazines, and where everybody was like, "She did it! Look at that!" And it was all my ego. I finally realized it was my ego, and we grew really, really fast, and that played into my ego, and I felt like that was my entire identity was all the press we were getting.
All right, here's yellow.
And yet, 2019, we did 34 million in revenue, and I did 36,000 in profit, and I paid myself $60,000. This is not a success story. Yeah. The outward world thought I was so successful, and I'm barely scraping by eating ramen, So I think, really figuring out that, I needed to be smaller, like we talked about before, and focusing on profit margin. Being a smaller company doesn't feed your ego anymore. But I finally figured out that everything I thought the business world was isn't. All these sales, all these glossy pictures of people that made it. I'm yeah, it was like a fire sale most of the time. And it was all these people I wanted to be, that are these girl bosses that made it. I'm they don't own their companies anymore. And they're, yeah.
And it's interesting because we had talked a lot, and I'm sure through your head, you went through some journeys about where do I want to go? Do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to bring in partners? Do I want to do whatever? You know what I mean? And I'm just curious, Tim, I think about all the folks that kind of think about that kind of thing. Did you go through some of that?
Absolutely. I built this to sell. I wanted to sell it.
Here's yellow.
You work 100 hours a week and not die, So I wanted to sell it so bad. It's so hard.
But it's the reality, right?
Totally. And then we got an offer from one of our big competitors, this big company. And I thought, yes, we're going to make it. And it was a horrible offer. And so now I'm building to keep instead of building to sell. And it's a completely different thing. We're investing in, things for 5 years from now.
You're able to build to keep rather than build to sell because you built this company yourself and you didn't take on any financing, any funding, which is so strange for a startup that was built in Silicon Valley.
Absolutely. I'm very fortunate. I'm in a CEO group with lots of CEOs that, are constantly telling me how lucky I am, even though I have never felt lucky in this. Because I don't go into every board meeting being worried I'm going to be fired right now because,
You're the boss.
Yeah, I'm the boss. I'm we just, we bought a farm. No investors would ever let you buy a farm. We, are farming now. That's a long-term goal.
Well, the last time you were on with us, we're going to get to the consumer in a second. The last time you were on with us, we talked about two things that really stuck out. One was the effect of tariffs. Did you buy a farm to offset the effect of tariffs?
No, absolutely not.
Why
But it is going to help us.
Okay.
We bought the farm because we're let's do this because it's hard to get this type of flour at this time of year where we think we can get it where we're at. We also built it because we're farm real flowers. Let's actually
shouldn't we have a farm?
Shouldn't we have a farm and do that? But we're investing in. We do think long term this vertical integration will allow us to keep a couple $1 million more in our pockets every year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long.
You gave us such an education, I think, about where flowers come from, and I think there's just this assumption we go buy flowers. I don't know whether we thought they were all in the U.S. and there wasn't, right?
No.
So much of the flowers come in.
Where's the farm?
Oregon. We bought the farm in Washington, so we have a small farm in Washington. We also put in about 40,000 plants in Oregon last year as well.
And will you be able to cultivate those flowers yearly, like throughout the
Although
year?
it takes 3 years for your first harvest. So again, that's why investors would never let you put the money into it now.
And the flowers that you produce at those farms on that land only go to you, or do you sell them to others?
Yeah, we'll keep it. Right now, the amount that we're growing, we can use that every year. If we decide to keep going, then we can wholesale it. It's another revenue chain for us.
What percentage of the flowers that are grown there, did that satisfy of the flowers that you use in a single year?
Like a couple percent.
Okay,
A
so
percent,
still,
like,
it's
yeah.
still
Yeah.
really, you would never be able to get to the point because of the global supply chain where you could actually grow all the flowers you would want.
Never. And we don't want to. It's too much of a risk, Yeah. I learned through COVID that I definitely need to diversify more than I had. I mean, having our facility that made 92% of our bouquets close down in one day in 2020.
Remember you talking? Yeah.
Taught me that wasn't very smart. So I'm definitely making sure we diversify now.
Talk to us about tariffs and the environment. Like, I just think, again, why we love, many reasons we love talking to you, but you really give us an idea of what it's like to run a small business, although you've made it a bigger business over the years. But stuff coming out of Washington, tariffs, how has that changed? Has it gotten any easier?
Yeah, no. We change, and it actually hurts the consumers more. I mean,
Because you raise prices.
we raise prices, or we have to.
All right, we got a yellow mask.
Some things that are nicer for them. We have to.
Now we're going to do the black outlines.
Because we don't want to price ourselves out of the market.
Yeah.
We have to use different flowers, even though they're not the ones that consumers want. There are things like that.
I hate when flowers do that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not what we want to do.
Right.
And also, I think we're the poster child for having tried to do this, like, made in America, grown in America. Like, when we started, I only bought American-grown flowers, right? And we ran out of flowers in 2017. Just ran out. Now there's fewer farms than there were in 2017 because labor's so high. Now with immigration issues, I just came a couple weeks ago. I was just down in our fields, and we were just getting it ready for winter. I couldn't walk for 3 days after doing 1 week of work in the fields. Like, there are not people here that are wanting to be farm workers, let me just say.
So what would you say to folks who are like, no, pushing back on immigration, it makes sense, like, we have to be doing this. What would you say to folks who are listening or watching right now?
I think that ship has sailed generations ago. There is no way, we tried to buy American grown, it wasn't possible. We're not going to bring farming back to this country unless we do something about immigration. There are too many ripple effects going on with why it won't work. Also, having production facilities of making bouquets in the United States. We do. We make about 50% in the United States and 50% outside of the United States.
What do you, can I ask you where outside?
South America.
South America. Okay.
And most of them are in the United States, but the flowers are coming from South America.
Yeah.
There's a few in South America that are
And
making
purple.
bouquets
Look
as
at the
well.
purple.
And it doesn't work. Like, I think Ford Motor Company is a good example of this when they're talking about open jobs. Or I talked to a guy that has an engine rebuilding plant in the Midwest that had 40% open positions.
We just don't have those people.
We don't have people. Like,
Yeah.
we're telling people go to college so you don't have to work a factory job. Nobody wants to work a factory job.
We also have an aging population, right? So we're not replenishing.
So we talked about tariffs. We talked about farming. We talked quite a bit about your story to the consumer and the American consumer. How's the consumer in your view?
The consumer has definitely shifted. I think just like what you were talking about, people right now, it's a little concerning with the economy where people are still spending a lot of money, but the people that can't spend a lot of money can't buy.
Yeah.
So, it's not the company I want to be where I'm only appealing to one type of consumer. So we're really trying to make sure that we're not doing that. But with tariffs and rising prices and everything, that kind of backs you in a corner of what do you do? I don't want every bouquet to cost $150 because how many people can afford a $150 bouquet to send to their best friend for their birthday?
Right.
So we're looking at
and as a consumer, like I know I definitely cut back. It's like you can't do as much as you would like to.
Absolutely, we're in the gifting space, so you just cut gifts out, and we don't want that. So we're looking to try and find ways to get closer to the end consumer, so we can cut it in shipping instead of the flower pots and things like that we can be a little bit creative with.
What? Oh, I guess we have to go.
I think we have time for one more from you, Carol.
Wreath. I don't know if everybody can see the wreath that is on. Probably I'll have to lift it up. How big? Like, do you do a lot of wreaths?
We wish we could do more. We sell out of them all the time. We're working with a lot of new producers. They're high labor.
Really?
It's a high labor. Yeah. So we are constantly looking. We work with small farms on our wreath making program. So very proud of that and trying to get more for us. But it's like the best way to come home and feel like it's Thanksgiving, right?
I'd read.
It smells really good.
It does smell really good. She walked into the studio. If you had to do a word to describe the outlook, how do you see it right now? You can do 2 words.
Bleak but hopeful.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think, and this is with somebody who's got business going, job openings.
Yeah.
Wow.
In terms of the context of the last 15 years,
I mean-
apart from COVID, where is it? Like, what year are we in?
10
We're
seconds.
15. Bleak, I would just say because it's personally how I feel about what's going
Okay.
on. But like we're doing okay, so I'm hopeful that we're going to make some changes.
And you bought a farm.
Yeah, bought a farm.
I love that. I want to be able to say we bought a farm. Christina Istanbul, founder and CEO of Farm Girl Flowers, always makes us feel good. This is good.
This is New York's only 24-hour source for world markets and breaking business news. Bloomberg 1130. Coming up, the latest market-moving headlines from Bloomberg. First, an update from CBS News.
CBS News brief. A federal judge has ordered federal prosecutors to turn over all grand jury material to former FBI Director James Comey's defense team. Legal analyst Laurie Levinson.
The judge in Jim Comey's case has found that there have been repeated problems with how the prosecutor ran the grand jury, including misleading the grand jury on the law.
Comey has pleaded not guilty to charges he lied to Congress. President Trump was asked today about his decision urging House Republicans to vote to release the Epstein files. He was asked if he'd sign the bill if the Senate approves it.
If they can do whatever they want. You give them everything, sure I would. Let the Senate look at it, let anybody look at it. But don't talk about it too much because honestly, I don't want to take it away from us.
The acting chief of FEMA resigned today. He'd been on the job only a few months. On Wall Street, stocks finished lower. CBS News Brief, I'm Cammie McCormick.
Everything you love about Bloomberg Radio is now inside your car. The new Bloomberg Business app featuring Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. All your favorite Bloomberg Radio shows right on your dashboard. Download it free in the Apple App Store or on Google Play.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces. Just by giving her a bear hug, she masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Staples presents An Easy Holiday.
Running a small business during the holidays is hard.
No truer words were.
But this year, Staples helped me have an easy holiday.
Your script has a typo.
Nope, easy peasy. I just ordered online at staples.com and picked up in store. And with UPS on site, shipping was easy too. Plus huge savings on tech, custom cards, even my holiday sale signage.
Visit your local Staples store or staples.com today for up to 45% off select laptops.
That was easy.
It's 12/27.
Bloomberg Radio, on demand and in your podcast feed.
On the latest Balance of Power podcast, we talked with James Jeffrey, former U.S. ambassador to Iraq and Turkey, about President Trump's meeting this week with the Saudi Crown Prince.
Saudi Arabia is a hugely important country in the region for U.S. relations. This is even bigger than Saudi Arabia. It's locking in a regional security, trade, and diplomatic coalition that will build on the defeat first of Daesh, the Islamic State, about 7 years ago, and now the defeat of Iran, its proxy empire over the past 2 years, to allow the region finally to enjoy peace, prosperity, political independence, and allow the United States slowly to back out of the region. So lots at stake. The Saudis, like the Israelis, like the Turks, like a couple of other countries, are central to it. Trump is pushing forward on all of these fronts.
And what does Saudi Arabia get out of this visit, Ambassador?
First of all, acknowledgement. This is almost a state visit, although technically the crown prince is the crown prince, not the king. The king is still there. But he's also getting to build on the Biden fist bump forgiveness for the Khashoggi case. But more importantly, he needs economic coordination. He needs U.S. investment. He's promised $600 billion in Saudi investment in the U.S., and that's a good deal for Saudi Arabia, given the way our economy is cooking. But also, he wants progress on a pathway, that's the word we're using now, to a Palestinian state.
Hear the full conversation on the latest edition of the Balance of Power podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Plus, listen anytime on the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
It's 4:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all finished lower today, and that's putting it mildly. The Dow was down 1.2% today, down 57 points. We had the S&P down 61, dropped there of 0.9%, while the NASDAQ Composite Index down 192, down by 0.8%. The Russell 2000 Index small cap stocks was down 2%. 10-year 4.13%, the 2-year 3.61%. Spot gold down 1%, 4,042 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude oil down 0.6%, 59.71 a barrel, and Bitcoin now lower by 1.9%. Bitcoin $91,600. Sebastian Balafas is founder and CEO at Goldvest Advisory. And right here on Bloomberg Business Week Daily, she told us you got to keep all the selling in perspective.
This is a healthy breather. I think it's been a great market. We have to remember that we're still up double digits on the S&P, over 13 or 14%, and tech is up even more. So a lot of clients that had a greater percentage of tech in their portfolios, they're doing great.
Sebastian Balafas, founder and CEO of Goldvest Advisory, interviewed right here on Bloomberg Business Week Daily. This Bloomberg Business Flash is brought to you by Van Eck, celebrating 70 years of helping investors stay ahead in a world that never stands still. Visit vaneck.com. NVIDIA reports Wednesday, stock lower today, down 1.9%. Target will be in focus tomorrow, down today by 1.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thanks for that update, Charlie. Appreciate it. Garbage in, garbage out.
What could you be talking about, Mr. Stenovac?
Well, it's like, computer science term from back in the day, but we talk about it a lot with AI. Yeah. Like if data that goes into something is flawed, the data that comes out is flawed. It's only as good as the data that goes in.
Yeah, we do talk about this in the context of artificial intelligence, hallucinations. It's like when an LLM gives you an answer that you know is totally off base, or gives you a picture or image that's way off the mark as well.
Sorry. I was just thinking my friend actually asked for an invitation he wanted to create an invitation for a Halloween party. He was like, he wanted the image generator to really mess it up. Like, oh, totally. He's like, no, make it more messed up. Mess it up even more.
Did it?
Oh, yeah, it did. Yeah.
Oh.
Sometimes it does what it tells you to do.
No.
Yeah, it works.
Now I'm curious. TBD.
I'll find it. I bet Shazia thinks about this stuff a lot. Not the Halloween part of this, but, the hallucination stuff. She's the founder and CEO of BioRender. It's a company that creates software to generate scientific images and illustrations. It's important that those are accurate. She was formerly the lead medical illustrator for National Geographic. She did that for a decade. She joins us from Toronto. Shiz, welcome to the program. I'm curious, a very interesting company. We don't talk about this part of AI a lot. You've got this recent partnership with Anthropic, the maker of the Claude LLM. You have this incredible background, Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, a dual BFA in Fine Art and Pre-Med from Queen's University. Why is scientific imaging important in the context of AI?
All right. What color we doing next, G-Boo?
For science in particular, accuracy is really paramount. And so we're really excited to partner with companies like Anthropic, because this is just actually one big step in making AI safer and more reliable for science. You said that your friend made some Halloween advice or garbage in, garbage out, and that really is the case right now. It really doesn't do scientists a work justice.
how bad the state of bioimages are today. And actually, Dario, Anthropic CEO, said that AI could compress the next 50 to 100 years of biological progress into just 5 to 10, which means that the bottleneck really shifts from computation to human comprehension.
You're talking about Dario Amodei.
On 60 Minutes.
60 Minutes last night.
Yeah.
I've interviewed him before over in March in San Francisco. Do you believe?
What color are we doing next?
Do you agree with him?
Are we doing this one? This one is a blue. This is a blue wannabe color. This is called, this one is called Beautiful. Beautiful. It's a beautiful color. I'm gonna do a suit. I'm gonna do a suit in this color.
More dangerous ones are like protein folding the wrong way.
You see that? It's like a, it's like a deep dark blue.
One arrow moving in the wrong direction in a metabolic pathway could mean that, we're feeding the tumor instead of starving it. And for biorenders, it turns out that this is exactly what AI needed. We've been spending the last 8-9 years building the world's largest library of expert-vetted biovisuals. And we're very proud to be sort of a trusted.
I already did purple with the yellow.
Going forward, all the frontier models where.
You see that? I already did the purple with the yellow.
Tell us a little bit about your company in particular, what you're doing, and this idea of, again, these are some of these things I feel like we just take for granted, images within science, right?
You read my mind, and I read your mind.
The need to have these images makes, and are they constantly being updated? Like, give us an idea of what you guys are doing and what we need to understand about medical imaging, not MRIs, but just understanding everything and anything that's in the body. Yeah, and that's a great point. MRIs can take us to
before I forget, hold on, I gotta set my,
surgical fields are very bloody.
I gotta set my,
and so we have to rely on a little bit more, I guess, artistic.
I gotta set my thing here.
And BioRender is a software that scientists create beautiful biological diagrams.
7 p.m. I have to.
The Canva or Figma for biology, for those folks that aren't familiar with the science graphics world. So you can imagine the scientists coming in, they drag and drop like an anatomically correct brain, for example.
Actually, no, not 7. 7:30. 7:30.
Interacting with the tumor cell, and you can zoom even closer.
Yeah, 7:30 p.m.
Reactions happening within the brain cell, but you can see how quickly it gets difficult and complex. And before BioRender, scientists were actually
7:30 p.m. I gotta go and I gotta buy the.
Primarily PowerPoint of all tools. So they spend.
I gotta buy the tickets and I got to pick up the package.
And squares and the lines and arrow shapes. And so we thought, there's got to be a better way. So my co-founders and I, Ryan, Katya, and I launched BioRender about 8 years ago, hoping to solve this communication gap for scientists. Who are your customers? And how do you guys make money? We do make money. Yeah, we've been lucky to be profitable pretty early, actually. We're very fortunate that the scientific community saw the need and just uptook it. And our customers are primarily researchers, including leaders, actually. They're in there making PowerPoint diagrams, hopefully not much longer if these are longer, in pharmaceutical companies, biotechs, academic institutions, and even the publishing world.
Yeah, I'm curious about copyright with this. There's an article in Chemistry World from just about a year ago about how thousands of published studies could contain images with incorrect copyright licenses, and they mentioned some BioRender, images created by BioRender. Have you guys figured out the copyright issues in terms of what you're looking at and then what you're producing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, at the end of the day, we have to sort of shift the narrative away from sort of the copyright or it's sort of the antiquated era of, kind of who published it first. We're really trying, our mission is to empower the world to communicate science and understand it faster through visuals. And so what's happening actually now in our library is scientists, we have about 4 million plus users on our platform. They've been knocking on our doors wanting to share their diagrams in our community libraries. they say they don't care if scientists, rip it apart and use it. They just feel so compelled to change the narrative and change the status quo of how science is communicated today, that they are willing to share the work that they do in BioRender back into the community. So it's almost looking more like, instead of the Canva or Figma, more of the GitHub or even Wikipedia, because they share their work back into our library, and either we spot errors or the community puts the jump on those errors, we update those, and then it gets back uploaded into the repository. So we're kind of shifting the focus away from, who said it first, to let's be open and share our work and really further and accelerate science. Yeah, super interesting. Hopefully we can come back and continue this in the future. Shiz Aoki, founder and CEO of BioRender, joining us from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, joining us on this Monday.
Coming up next, stocks on the move on a decidedly down day for U.S. indexes. This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily. Coming up next on Bloomberg Business Week Daily, catch complete coverage from the world of politics and the world of business. That's after the show. Bloomberg Balance and Power. Tune in for Joe Matthew and Laura Davison tonight at 5 p.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg Radio and Television.
Thursday, September jobs data finally arrived. The unemployment rate 4.3%.
It's about moving forward with the Fed.
Delayed by the government shutdown. Will the numbers affect the Fed's December decision?
The labor market's now for the Federal Reserve.
The September jobs report on Bloomberg Surveillance.
The really close to the Bloomberg screen.
Thursday morning at 8:30. Listen on Apple CarPlay or Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. And always on Bloomberg 1130. Context changes everything. This is the story of the one. As a custodial supervisor at a high school, he knows that during cold and flu season, germs spread fast. It's why he partners with Grainger to stay fully stocked on the products and supplies he needs, from tissues to disinfectants to floor scrubbers. Also that he can help students, staff, and teachers stay healthy and focused. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
With Progressive, renters can save on protection for the things that make your place yours, even things that don't make sense to everyone.
People always wonder if I don't get rid of my guitar since I never play. But what if I actually end up taking lessons? Sure, I've had it for 8 years, but if I get rid of it, then what will my New Year's resolution be next January?
Exactly. So bundle your renters and auto and save with Progressive and protect the things that make sense to you. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates and other insurers not available in all states or situations and accept policy terms and conditions.
Explore the most interesting topics in finance, markets, and economics. Listen to Odd Lots with Joe Eisenthal and Tracy Alloway. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Bloomberg Weather is brought to you by Blindster.com.
Need new blinds? At Blindster.com, we offer guaranteed low prices, guaranteed satisfaction, free samples, and free shipping. At Blindster, we take the fear out of ordering custom blinds, shades, and shutters so you can do it yourself and save big. Blindster.com.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Skies will be clear tonight. Winds will die down. Low dropping to the lower to middle 30s. Sunshine to start today, Tuesday, then increasing clouds. High in the middle to upper 40s. Some showers around Tuesday night, low in the middle to upper 30s. Morning clouds and becoming partly sunny on Wednesday. High again in the upper 40s. I'm Scott Kaplan with your 3-day forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Coming up next on Bloomberg Business Week Daily, stock on the move. Bailey Lipschultz is here. Got a lot of stocks to choose from today. This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily.
Yep, got tickets.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week.
Oh, you know what I gotta buy too? I gotta buy
Bloomberg Radio.
I gotta get another notebook so I can do the numbers. I'm gonna do the numbers show on YouTube. That's my next adventure. We're gonna do the numbers show, Glenny. We're gonna do the numbers show. Pick a number, any number, pick a number. 1 through 99. 1 through 99.
You didn't want to try the Boston pizza?
No, we almost did go to a pizza place, and then we just kind of shifted gears.
Okay.
Oh, wait, Friday night we had
Okay.
Sorry, Saturday night. One more day we would have had pizza.
Okay.
It's a blur.
blur. It's all a blur.
I'm just quizzing you.
I know, and I apparently failed.
No. Well, I didn't know the right answer anyways.
What'd you do? What? You want to talk about pizza?
I'm always hungry.
Yeah, well, you are always hungry. Okay. Control master with instead. Let's get you some stocks on the move. Billy Lipschultz, he's Bloomberg News equities reporter. He's in our studio with some movers. Dell, this is definitely one to watch today.
Yeah, Dell, ticker Dell, DELL, worst performer in the S&P 500, down 8.4%, closing at the lowest level since early September. This came after Morgan Stanley downgraded the stock and some peers on sluggish demand, basically saying that this whole super cycle about memory that's lifting Micron and lifting some of these chip makers is actually going to hurt their bottom line, hurt their businesses. So not only does it impact margins when chips are more expensive, they're also worried a bit about what the impacts will be for the broader economy. So if people don't want to pay up for a few $100 or $1,000 for a new computer, then not only are you dealing with more expensive inputs, then people aren't really buying it.
A double downgrade. They went like
2 levels, right?
2 levels, yeah.
Which is not good. Normally don't see that.
Shares only after today. Shares only up 6.3% so far this year.
Weren't they on a tear for a
They were
while?
on a tear. Yeah.
For a while.
Dell was on a tear. IBM was going to reshape and reinvigorate itself. Big Blue was on quite a tear, though it still is right now at $297. A year ago was closer to 208. So a big win still for IBM, but seeing kind of the older names underperform.
I think it's at 35% this year.
Get back to Dell if you were to go to the April lows.
Yeah, we're just gonna do the numbers. We're gonna do a numbers show. You know numbers?
At the end of
1 through 99.
October 28th, that was a 133% increase there. But since that,
And we're gonna match numbers, and we're gonna see which numbers are we feeling. Which numbers are good luck? Which numbers are bad luck?
The whole market is kind of underperforming.
Which numbers we're feeling.
Not what they have recently been.
let's talk about getting on a plane and getting somewhere.
That's on the next upcoming shows.
Light outside.
Weather's right outside where you mentioned post Liberation Day. Expedia, ticker EXPE, and Booking, ticker BKNG, both having their worst days since the day after Liberation Day tariff announcements. Expedia down 7.8%, Booking down 4.8%. This comes after the Google boogeyman strikes again. So online travel agencies under pressure. Google announcing they have an AI-powered feature that enables people to book flights and hotels. Basically, you describe what you want to do, and they're going to book it for you. Is the vision at least.
Yeah.
We saw a couple analysts come out and kind of defend the stock, saying, an idea is different than taking market share. But we've seen this with Google. We've seen this with Amazon. Amazon at one point was triggering sell-offs in medical device makers because there was just a fear that they were going to get into the space.
I've tried.
Which part? To get into the medical device space?
No, to get have an LLM make me some sort of trip or something. People say this is a great
Did it
thing.
not work? I've heard people, I saw somewhere where somebody got stranded somewhere and they used, I think, ChatGPT to figure their way out.
We were talking to someone about this last
Who
week.
was this?
I don't remember.
Somebody in Portugal, wasn't it?
We weren't in Portugal.
No, we weren't. But who was
Oh,
that?
that was my sister's friend.
Oh,
Yes. We were dinner together with my sister and her friend.
We have been on the road.
Yeah.
We're just like, who was?
And they were stuck in, she was
Right?
stuck in the Azores. She was trying to figure out how to get me off the island.
Yeah, and they used ChatGPT.
They used ChatGPT and they were able to
We eventually got there.
Oh, it worked out.
But it worked. She said it really worked. Wow. Okay, it's only Monday. Not even Tuesday, Lemon. Let's go to Alphabet.
Alphabet, the best performer in the S&P 500, one of the few that lifted this S&P up. So when you look at just a points basis, 5.8 points and 4.7 points, that kept the major averages from what would have been an even worse day when you look at kind of the underperformance. S&P closing off almost 1%, but Alphabet, ticker GOOGL, up more than 3%. At one point, it looked like it was on pace to close at a record high. It's always interesting when we have 13F filings happen on a Friday. So
I thought this was right under the radar.
right under the radar after 4 p.m. on a Friday. Are you kidding me? Disclosing that Berkshire Hathaway acquired 17.9 million shares, $4.9 billion stake.
Nobody will notice.
Nobody did. Nobody cares. People were like, well, you guys were on there, so.
I didn't realize it until this morning.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is this up so much? I'm like, wait, what did it do? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's your answer. But
Yeah, right? Berkshire, boom, stamp of approval.
It's not right.
But I'm going to be more interested now that Buffett is stepping away. What happens? Do we still see these Berkshire Hathaway bumps, or do we see people kind of say, oh, I guess, Oracle Omaha?
I think to be fair, I mean, you and I were talking about Apple, and they get like the new folks in charge. They've been having an impact on some of the names that Berkshire's been buying for a while. But you're right. Right? Like it'll be different. It'll be different
because everyone's like, what did Buffett do? Now it's like, Buffettless Berkshire deal.
Buffel's Berkshire. All right, Bailey Lipshow. Bloomberg. Let's try that again. Bailey Lipshow, Bloomberg News equities reporter. It's a Monday. All right, check out our Stock Movers podcast, 5-minute episodes, biggest winners and losers. Find it on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. You know what we can do now? Cross Monday off the list.
Soon. That's still some work to do.
I do too. Yeah. It's always there. Maybe LLMs can help us with that. Hey, do not go anywhere though. Balance of Power starts now.
Live from the financial capital of the world, broadcasting across the globe, this is WBER New York, Bloomberg 1130.
This is Balance of Power, live from Washington, D.C.
From Bloomberg's Washington, D.C. studios to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, welcome to Balance of Power. I'm Joe Matthew. Tonight, a blockbuster deal for American fighter jets, a commitment to release the Epstein files, and why President Trump says he blew his stack. It's a busy Monday at the White House. The president now calling for the House to vote in favor of a measure that would force the release of the Epstein files. Why now? What changed? Meantime, Trump not ruling out boots on the ground in Venezuela as the U.S. ramps up pressure on Maduro. We'll discuss that and more with Republican Congressman Troy Downing and Senate Intelligence Committee Vice Chair Senator Mark Warner up ahead. Also, Trump announcing he will allow the U.S. to sell F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia just a day before Mohammed bin Salman comes to Washington. The visit from the Saudi Crown Prince to the White House, the first since 2018. The killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi and what we can expect when both leaders sit down, and the potential Trump ordeal simmering behind the scenes when we speak to former Assistant Secretary of State Barbara Leaf. Also tonight, markets closing sharply lower as investors look ahead to NVIDIA's earnings this week. Well,
I was going to ask you something, Jibu. I want to ask it now. There's nobody here. Can you send me money on here? Can you see if you could click on anything that says send money or send super chats or any kind of donations? Can you check to see if you can do that? If the option shows up for you? I'm just curious.
Are you planning to sell F-35s to Saudi Arabia? And also, are you looking at doing a similar security agreement like you did with
No, I am planning.
You're going to sell F-35s?
They've got to like us very much. Look at the Iran situation, what we did in terms of obliterating, we obliterated their nuclear capability. Yeah, I will say that we will be doing that. We'll be selling F-35s.
All right, joining us now with details, Bloomberg's Kate Sullivan, who is reporting live from the White House North Lawn. Kate, what do you have for us?
That's right. So this deal on F-35s is a big question heading into tomorrow's very highly anticipated meeting between the president and the Crown Prince. Trump himself, as you just heard, confirmed this news to reporters, saying that the U.S. will in fact be selling Saudi Arabia these F-35 stealth fighter jets. Now, this is significant because the United States typically primarily sells these jets to formal military allies, like NATO members, for example. These are some of the world's most advanced jets. They cost about $100 million each, and Israel is the only country in the Middle East that currently has these jets. So Saudi Arabia acquiring them definitely changes the military balance in the region. But this is one of several issues that's going to be talked about tomorrow between the president and the Crown Prince. We're also expecting deals on security, defense, nuclear energy, and AI chips, so a lot to look out for there. Kate, the other big issue is this vote on the Epstein files in the House. For months, both House Speaker Mike Johnson and Trump have really sought to downplay and delay on this issue. Why are we suddenly seeing a strategy reversal to move quickly? So the president's reversal on this last night was absolutely stunning. As you mentioned, for months, the president has been trying to squash efforts, this bipartisan effort in Congress to release any federal records related to Epstein. And then last night, he pulled a complete 180 and said, actually, House Republicans should vote on this measure. So importantly, this is coming after reports that potentially dozens of Republicans were going to break with the president already and vote to release these files. The president today, we heard a little bit more on his thinking about this, saying, that he just wants people to stop talking about this. Saying,
Can't
let
see
everybody
it.
look at it, but don't talk about it too much, because honestly, I don't want it to take away from us. So a real acknowledgement there from the president that this storyline has taken up so much oxygen. He's received so much blowback on it. It's become a real source of friction even between among his most loyal supporters. And so, the story really doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon.
Bloomberg's Kate Sullivan. Kate, thank you so much. Spinning a couple of plates at the White House this evening. To that end, the House is expected to vote to release the files on Jeffrey Epstein this week. A vote is set for tomorrow following President Trump's reversal on the matter. The results should be interesting. Joining us now live from Capitol Hill with his perspective, Republican Congressman Troy Downing of Montana, a member of both the House Financial Services and Small Business Committees. It's great to see you, Congressman. Welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. Just so you know, there are other issues that we'd like to ask you about. But with this vote tomorrow and the president weighing in, I'm wondering if you've decided how you will vote here and to what extent we might see numbers of Republicans, if not a unanimous vote in the House.
Well, I've been pretty clear from the beginning, and I believe most of my colleagues have been as well. Everybody wants to see the bad people being held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Our biggest concerns are to make sure that we're protecting victims. And I just wanted to make sure from the beginning that those victims weren't exposed, the ones that didn't want to be exposed, and that we're taking that very seriously. But at this point, I agree with the president. This has become so much political noise that slowed us down from actually keeping up the momentum of doing what we have been doing and working for the American people and getting policy passed. But even though I believe the work being done on the oversight committee was superior to what's happening in this discharge petition, I do plan on supporting it, and I expect to have that vote to happen this week, if not tomorrow.
Trump has also said he would sign it if it comes to his desk. If the Senate takes this up, if Trump then signs it into law, how quickly do you think we could see these files, and what are you expecting will be contained in them?
Well, I don't think there's any smoking gun. Well, first question, I think it'll go quickly. I think that the president will sign it very quickly because he, just like the rest of us, wants to just get rid of this noise that's distracting us from actually, talking about the important things to the American people. But in terms of a smoking gun, if there was something in there that was embarrassing to this administration, it would have come out before. We've had this information has been with two different administrations, both the Biden and the Trump administration, and nothing came out in opposition in the last election. I don't believe that there's anything that's going to be surprising in there. My concern was just that it was done correctly and that we're protecting victims. And this is going to come out, in my opinion, very quickly.
So let's move on to some other policy here, Congressman. We want to use our time while you're with us, and I'm wondering your thoughts on this idea of selling F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia. Our viewers and listeners should know you're an Air Force veteran. You were deployed twice to Afghanistan. Is this the right thing right now for our national security?
Well, I'm going to, kind of take a level walk on that because I'm not sure. I understand that we need to be supporting our allies, and obviously Saudi Arabia has been an ally, especially in recent conflicts. Whether we want to start arming them with F-35s, I'm not fully convinced that's the right thing at this stage, but I'm listening, and I'll be administration on understanding what the goal is there.
So what are your hopes then for maybe a broader agreement tomorrow, Congressman? It's not just F-35s. We're talking about a massive amount of direct foreign investment potentially from the Saudis, if not a restructuring of the political order in the Middle East. Do you have high hopes?
Well,
Yeah, I think we've seen so much happening in the Middle East, and we can capitalize on that momentum and that goodwill and see if we can actually finally see some stability in a place that's been, traditionally unstable. And as we start to grow, allies in that region, and we start to have some kind of, connection and start doing business, start actually working together, I think that goes a long way in goodwill in making sure that we don't relive some of the issues that we've had with the Middle East in the past.
Congressman, one of the other issues that will be discussed tomorrow are AI and chips. You have a bill in Congress right now that would provide more training for small businesses. What is the deficit that you're seeing in terms of AI knowledge and expertise in the small business community?
Well, this is a huge one. Artificial intelligence, it's not just coming, it's here. And it's going to develop faster than most of us can keep up with. And what I'm worried about, I kind of see artificial intelligence as a modern day arms race. And if we're not developing it and we're not giving it the ability to grow here, our adversaries are going to grow faster and we're going to be left in the dust. And so one of the things with my AI Wise bill that we're trying to address is how small businesses can find information. So basically having training with the Small Business Association so that they're talking about concepts and things to be looking at and how to employ AI in your business, because it's already out there. There's so many things that are part of your life right now that you may not know about, and this tool is going to become more and more important. One of the things that I've said many times is artificial intelligence is one of the most exciting things that we've seen in my lifetime, and also one of the scariest things. We need to make sure that we're really educating ourselves, looking at this closely, and making sure that our small businesses have the opportunity to use those tools so that they can remain.
So you can't see any links that link you to that, right?
Congressman Troy Downing of Montana, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And on Wall Street, traders are preparing for both NVIDIA earnings and the jobs report data this week, which will be key in shaping the outlook for markets throughout the rest of 2025. However, it was President Trump's remarks in the Oval Office today that sent shares of Lockheed Martin soaring after he confirmed that the U.S. plans to sell F-35 jets to Saudi Arabia. For the details on everything we need to know from Wall Street today, we now turn to Power Moves with Bloomberg's Romaine Bostick, who joins live from World Headquarters in New York.
Yeah, Laura, a humbling day actually on Wall Street. We talk about the third straight day of declines for the major benchmark S&P 500. That's the first time we've had a trifecta of daily losses for at least a couple of months now, and it seems to suggest that a lot of the euphoria that we've seen in the market that had pushed the S&P up more than 35% over the last 7 months, the NASDAQ 100 up 50% over that stretch, that maybe that has finally run its course. You see that reflected not only in the S&P and the NASDAQ, but you saw that reflected in a big way in Bitcoin. Remember, we came into this year with a monster rally in the largest cryptocurrency. All of the gains on a year-to-date basis, Laura and Joe, that have now been erased. Some concerns here about whether this rally had gone too far, too fast, and we're going to get a big reality check over the next couple of days. Some big earnings out of some of the biggest retailers out there, like Walmart, Home Depot, and Lowe's. And at the same time, we get a big earnings report from the largest company in the world, NVIDIA, that will either ratify or maybe disprove just how much juice is left in that AI trade. Meanwhile, we have seen a rotation out of some of those tech stocks and into other areas like healthcare and defense. You referenced that Lockheed Martin rally that we saw on the day, those comments by President Trump giving a lift to at least one company in that sector, and maybe others. We may find out a little bit more when we see the president meet with the Saudi crown tomorrow in Washington.
Yeah, it's going to be a big day, Romaine. I hope you'll be with us. Bloomberg's Romaine Bostick in New York to kick us off for the week. We thank you. Coming up, we'll turn back to Congress and bring our conversation with Intelligence Committee Vice Chair, Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, in which we discuss the escalating tensions with Venezuela and, yes, the Epstein files. It's all ahead on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Well, it's 5:13 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. Fed Governor Christopher Waller is repeating his view that the central bank should lower rates when policymakers meet next month, citing a weak labor market, a monetary policy that is hurting low and middle-income consumers. Double Line Capital founder Jeff Gundlach says he's keeping his strategy simple by loading up on cash and staying away from private credit. And on a special edition of the Odd Lots podcast, marking the show's 10th anniversary, he also had this to say about the market backdrop.
In recent years, the garbage lending has not gone to the public markets. The garbage lending has gone to these private markets. And private credit has been very popular and is now increasingly been over-allocated to by large asset pools.
Double Line Capital founder Jeff Gundlach, and you can watch the full conversation on YouTube on the Bloomberg podcast channel. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all declined today. For the S&P, we saw a 61-point drop, wrapping up.
Are you there, Jibu? So what's up? You can't find any anything that allows you to send me anything, right?
NASDAQ down by 0.8%. Bitcoin higher today, right now up by 0.1%, but Bitcoin trading just below 92,000, 91,989. Again, recapping, stocks lower, S&P down 61, drop there of 0.9%. For on-demand news, 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News now wherever you get your podcasts, and Balance of Power continues now. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
It's Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. Alongside Laura Davison, I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. As Congress inches closer to passing a resolution that would kickstart the potential release of the Jeffrey Epstein files, Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia stopped by our bureau today for a sit-down conversation in which we discussed everything from President Trump's pressure on Venezuela to the release of those files. Listen.
Well, I would think you would. I mean, it's kind of hard when the president now is saying, oh, nothing to see here. Let's get all these files out. We've been asking for that for months.
Yeah.
For Senator Thune to then say we're going to ignore, some overwhelming majority. And how would you go about explaining, well, the president says it's okay for the House to do it, but not the Senate to do it? The American people need to see these files. And frankly, why in the hell has Trump been so concerned about them coming out, regardless of his turnabout in the last 24 hours?
Well, he's calling for investigations into Democrats, and we've seen some of the names here, including former President Bill Clinton. Are we going to be in a world now in which everybody votes to release the files, and the DOJ says, well, hang on a second, we've got an active investigation, and we can't do that now?
Well, I would worry whether this is an attempt to distract this whole notion. And I believe Thomas Massey, the Republican who's leading the effort in the House, has pointed that out. Are these kind of fake investigations now going to be a way?
So, Jibu, you're saying that you can't see that? You can't see those links for anything to send me anything? You can't see those links?
The president is so obsessed about this.
Well, it's coming against the backdrop of some pretty incredible developments when it comes to geopolitics. We're told we may be on the precipice of war in the Caribbean, which I know is something that you've been talking a lot about in your post on the Intel Committee. We're also going to be seeing a visit from MBS, a full state visit tomorrow, in which the prospect of selling F-35s to Saudi Arabia.
So how did these people beg for?
It's going to take some
beg for stuff because they're begging. They come on YouTube and they're begging. They're begging anybody for to send them anything.
Not a very good outcome, and the Maduro government's a bad guy. We don't even recognize Maduro, but I've seen nothing that would give a basis for a military intervention. And the activities they're taking right now in the Caribbean and in the Eastern Pacific, those are all about drugs, has nothing to do with Venezuela. On the case of MBS, I have visited.
Because you have to have a link to your CC. Okay, I see it. I see it now.
Saudi Arabia into the 21st century. I think you've seen a great deal of empowerment of women. I think the is trying to move away from oil, but whether they are really going to be the long-term steady partner that I think America would hope for is, again, a bit of an open question.
So wait a second. All these people that are donating, they're not even donating their money. They're donating from their credit cards, which means that they're going to be paying that off for the next 20 years.
And even on the airstrike, this is not something this has been building for months. The president's going to take action. I think it is absolutely obligatory that he would brief Congress. This is not something that would happen out of the blue in some other part of the
They're going to be paying that off for the next 30 years. The next 30 years. They'll never pay that credit card off.
Appears to be a he must keep Congress informed, and they have not done that at the level they should.
We've seen the president also turn to this affordability issue that Democrats had a lot of success with in the off-year elections just a couple weeks ago, in terms of talking about rolling back some of his tariff policies or looking at other ways to lower costs and these dividend checks that would go out to households. You're going to face voters in just about a year in Virginia, where Abigail Spanberger had a lot of success. How do Democrats sort of maintain their edge on this issue? What do you need to do?
I think you need to show you've got actual plans to bring down, for example, housing costs. I've got a series of ideas about how you might put more affordable housing on in connection with religious institutions, churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, a lot of open land there. You have to speed up the zoning process. I think we're calling out the huge mistake that Trump has made with his tariff policies. These tariffs are taxes. Average family is going to be charged about an extra $2,000. And you would have thought that Donald Trump, after all his critiques of Joe Biden, would not use the same, basic argument. Hey, you don't understand. Prices are going down. Well, people know prices are not going down. They go to the grocery store. And I think Trump's disconnection on that, and it was a little bit of what Biden tried to do, saying the economy was better than it was and that inflation wasn't real. That came back and hit Biden. I think this same kind of a false narrative that's coming out of Trump is going to be pretty negative for him as well.
And he likes to talk about energy as, one of the ways he's getting prices down lower. And I just wonder if I can add to that.
But on energy, sure. Let's look at this. Trump is not for any kind of electricity or energy that comes from wind and solar. Well, electrons are electrons. We need more of them. And I frankly think one of the areas the president could lean into is nuclear. We will never be able to power all the data centers unless we can use what I believe small modular reactors.
This is why I bring it up, because you're a senator in the data center capital of the world, so you have more experience with this, and as a former governor, than a lot of politicians who are suddenly experts on energy and AI. And the fact is, there's a worry that all of the data centers popping out of the earth like weeds right now are going to make energy more expensive for consumers. Your answer is small modular reactors.
That is part on the grid. Get it right there on the grid. Don't put it on the grid. And frankly, there should be no way that consumers should have to pay for the cost of increased energy costs coming out of these data centers. The hyperscalers, the Amazon, the Metas, the OpenAIs, the entities who've got virtually unlimited financing, they have to pay for these increased energy costs. And I think in many cases they will, but you've got to prove that to consumers first.
On AI,
I ordered a whole bunch of C7 bulbs to replace on my
regulating AI, other technologies. What do you see the role for the Senate?
On my balcony. I'm going to replace all the burnt out bulbs on the Christmas lights.
Economic crisis is the number of kids that are going to be coming out of college with student debt who aren't going to be able to find jobs because AI is eliminating those entry-level jobs. We're already at 9% recent college graduate unemployment. I think that number could go to 25%. And that is going to cause economic havoc. It's going to cause huge distress to parents who paid for this higher education. And I think the AI tech pros, frankly, there may be AI jobs downstream, but there's going to be a 4 or 5 year gap. And I think these AI companies need to contribute to how we create and retrain for these AI-driven economies. If they don't, then we will need further regulation. But I think as well, these guys always say, we can figure out a smarter plan than government. Well, then have at it, but you guys got to pay.
You know what it's like to see a massive investment like this when you bring us back to the late 90s, when you were in the telecom sector, when we were laying fiber across the country. There was a question about, how much of a shakeout there would be at some point, and we eventually saw the answer. I wonder if you see parallels now. There's talk about a bubble, about circular investing. Senator, you know more about this than
I can read a balance sheet, which puts me in a pretty small minority.
That does put you. So how many winners and losers will come at this moment? And when you see Virginia at the center of this investment, do you just keep piling money into it?
Well, I don't think the existing data centers are going to disappear. Whether they're going to, they're building some, I think, in Louisiana, Texas, that are, 5x the size of anything we've got in Virginia. I do wonder with some of these valuations.
Look at this one, Carnation Pink. This one is called Carnation Pink. Do you see that?
Back and say, why didn't we see that coming? And, will there be
Carnation Pink.
AI be transformative? Absolutely. But what happened in the 90s, we became such...
You see that color name? Carnation Pink.
See the dark underbelly, particularly in social media. I think, I'm optimistic about AI, but there's going to be huge job dislocation. There's going to be a lot of folks left behind. And if we don't make sure that the very power that generates the AI tools is paid for fairly, then the American people are going to turn back against it.
Speaking of potential bubbles, we've also seen the price of Bitcoin tumble in recent days, and all the gains for the year have been wiped out. You've been very involved in this market structure bill that has been stalled in the Senate. Is there a potential to have a bipartisan way forward, or is the Trump administration's stance of sort of just not regulating going to be the law of the land?
Listen, it took me a long time to move past being a crypto skeptic. I have come to the conclusion it's going to be here, and it ought to have American-based rules. We ought to not cede that. I was part of that whole effort around stablecoin, and where that became law, the market structure legislation is much more complex, and it is made extraordinarily more difficult, even if you can get agreement. What do you do about the ethics? Because you've got the president's family so grossly enriching themselves in plain sight on crypto that it is we've got to grapple with that issue as well.
Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia talking with us a bit earlier today in our Washington bureau. Coming up, President Trump says he will approve the sale of F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia when he meets with the Crown Prince tomorrow. We'll discuss that visit ahead and what else might come of it with Barbara Leaf, the former Assistant Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs in the Biden administration. She's with us next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. Is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
It's 5:46 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook is offering a detailed rebuttal to mortgage fraud allegations made by President Trump and other officials, arguing in a letter today to Attorney General Pam Bondi that the claims, quote, fail on even the most cursory look at the facts. Some of the other stories we're following. Down day today ahead of earnings out of NVIDIA on Wednesday after the close of trading. As for the AI earnings backdrop, Jonathan Golub is chief equity strategist at Seaport Global Holdings.
I thought the most important thing we heard this earnings season was when Jamie Dimon made the comment that they already, profitable on their AI investments. That the turnaround to these things, becoming profitable was already here. That this is not a decade-long promise, but these are things that can save.
This one is called Scarlet.
Right away.
This one is called Scarlet.
Seaport Global, by the way, he sees the S&P climbing to 70.
You see that? Scarlet.
End of 2026. Today it was a down Monday, back to work Monday. Losses for the U.S. equity market with the S&P down 61, drop there of 0.9%. The Dow down 1.2%. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Scarlet.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Clear skies across the tri-state area tonight. Winds will die down, low 30 to 35. Morning sun and increasing clouds on Tuesday, high in the middle to upper 40s. Showers likely Tuesday night, lows only drop to the middle to upper 30s. Early clouds and skies become partly sunny on Wednesday, high again getting up to 45 to 50. I'm Scott Kaplan with your 3-day forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Will the Democrats reclaim the House in 2026?
Is that a question?
Yes. Recently on IBKR Forecast Trader, yes was 71 cents. No was 29. If you're right, you get $1 per contract.
When?
After the 2026 elections. But you earn an interest-like incentive coupon daily, and you can sell anytime the price works for you.
So, if I buy yes at 71 and then later buy no at 15, that's 14 cents profit?
Exactly. $1 in, 86 cents out, 14 cents profit.
Where do I do this?
IBKR Forecast Trader. Open an account at ibkr.com/elect.
Restrictions apply. Forecast contracts not suitable for all investors. Staples presents an easy holiday.
Running a small business during the holidays is hard.
No truer words were.
But this year, Staples helped me have an easy holiday.
Your script has a typo.
Nope, easy peasy. I just ordered online at staples.com and picked up in store. And with UPS on site, shipping was easy too. Plus huge savings on tech, even my holiday sales signage.
Visit your local Staples store or staples.com today for up to 45% off select laptops.
That was easy.
It's 1227.
Get the best reporting from Bloomberg News every business day from across the globe. This is David Gura. Subscribe to the Big Take podcast on the iHeartRadio app, the Bloomberg Business app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. Alongside Laura Davison, I'm Joe Matthew. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is expected to arrive here in Washington tomorrow for a visit with President Trump, his first trip to the U.S. Capitol in 7 years. And this afternoon, the president shed some light as to what might come from this meeting, when saying that he would approve the sale of F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia. When asked by Bloomberg, Scott Wood.
To Saudi Arabia, and also are you looking at doing a similar security agreement like you did with
No, I am planning.
You're going to sell F-35?
They've got to like us very much. Look at the Iran situation, what we did in terms of obliterating, we obliterated their nuclear capability. Yeah, I will say that we will be doing that. We'll be selling F-35.
Joining us now for a preview of what we're watching for tomorrow is Bloomberg's Wendy Benjaminson, who joins us here live in our Washington bureau. Wendy, one of the things that we know about Trump is that he loves great pomp and circumstance when it comes to these foreign leader visits. What can we expect in terms of grand gestures tomorrow when MBS comes to the White House?
Well, you're absolutely right. He's getting just shy of the full state treatment. He'll have lunch and dinner at the White House, and all of the bells and whistles that go along with that. It's the same sort of reception that Trump got when he made his first foreign trip, was to Saudi Arabia. But as he said, just the big announcement, which is now he's already made, is that he will sell these F-35s to Saudi Arabia, which is a pretty controversial decision. But then there's also a possible deal on chips, on microchips, and there's also, he's trying to get some diplomatic leverage there with Saudi Arabia, which is the one thing that probably won't happen. I think Crown Prince Salman will leave with F-35s, and the U.S. will not have normalization. The U.S. will not have achieved normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel.
We're going to get a bit of a flyover tomorrow morning. Maybe it'll be F-35s.
Right, yeah.
But I'm curious what you make of his decision to tell Schuyler that, aside from Schuyler Woodhouse's great persuasive powers.
Absolutely.
It's almost as if he showed up with that in his mind to step on his own lead tomorrow. Why come out with it today? It moved shares of Lockheed Martin.
Well, that's maybe one reason. But also, I think Trump likes to, he likes to build anticipation. He wants people to be excited about this deal and to sell it. But as I heard from one of your earlier guests, not all Republican lawmakers are on board with this. There are deep concerns about whether that technology that is in the F-35s would be accessible to China, thanks to the Crown Prince. And, and also there is that idea that Israel is supposed to have qualitative military advantage in the region. That's U.S. policy. And these F-35s don't quite equalize it, but certainly get Saudi Arabia part of the way there. He obviously likes the F-35s. He was very pleased with the pilots who flew them in Iran, so that's what he's going for. He's just building up that anticipation. So the great showman.
This will be an interesting day tomorrow, complete with full arrival ceremony, which we haven't seen in a bit. Bloomberg's Wendy Benjaminson, thank you as always. And for more on tomorrow's visit between President Trump and the Saudi Crown Prince, we bring in the voice of Ambassador Barbara Leaf, former Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs in the Biden administration, now Senior International Policy Advisor at Arnold & Porter. Ambassador, it's great to see you. Welcome to Bloomberg TV and radio. I guess we should take the president at his word here. I suppose he could change his mind. But what do you make of this decision to provide this important weapons platform to Saudi Arabia, one that
all right, I'm finished. Just put in the final touches.
Well, you're right. It's hugely significant. And to Wendy's point, there is the issue of not just U.S. policy,
all right,
U.S. law.
we're finished.
That, the U.S. will uphold Israel's qualitative military edge.
Look at this, Grandmaster.
Careful scrutiny and analysis that goes into such a decision, so that Israel's QME is upheld. And we've heard from Israelis that they had hoped that there would be a good bit of conditioning on that. Quite apart from Turkey, who took possession of purchased Russian arms, which caused the upending of their F-35 program. There was also the UAE, which had hoped to.
All right, we're going to go into the next episode.
They're not very happy tomorrow.
Just about 5 weeks ago, Trump was in the region heralding an onslaught of the ceasefire between Israel and Gaza. How present do you expect that very, very fragile agreement to be in tomorrow's meeting?
Well, I think it'll figure as a very important set of discussions. For one thing, the UN Security Council did successfully pass a resolution today that frames the next phase, that essentially gives international legal framing for the next phase of the Gaza plan, to set up an international security stabilization force and to lay out the parameters for. And there is a faint wisp of language that lays out the possibility, endorses effectively, then conditions are right, Palestinian.
Can you hear my news radio? Can you hear that?
But the hard work is really beginning now, is underway now, to tease out all the many difficult.
Is it low, medium, or high? How do you hear it?
And when this ISF is deployed, how Palestinian forces are deployed, even ahead of the ISF, who is going to be part of that governance structure, things like that.
I want to ask you, Ambassador, about what is happening or what may be about to happen in Venezuela. Now that the USS Gerald Ford Carrier Strike Group is in the region, adding to an already massive armada that we've assembled off the coast of Venezuela.
How do you hear it? Low, medium, or high? How do you hear it? Medium? Okay.
There are questions now about a full-on invasion that may or may not include boots on the ground. The president was asked about this, and we want to let our listeners and viewers hear what he said.
I don't rule out anything. We just have to take care of Venezuela. They dumped hundreds of thousands of people into our country from prisons. Nobody knows better than this young lady right here. She's done an incredible job with Tom Homan and all your people. It's amazing.
Just to
look at this. Look at these numbers. These are the.
Troops on the ground. I don't rule that.
These are all the.
Ambassador. What are we doing?
All the cap cut edits that I did.
That is the question that everyone is asking, including members of Congress from.
See, that's a lot. That's a, and I actually have it on another paper too. I have one more square grid on another paper also.
Stress the pressure on the Maduro government, but it does add about 5,500 troops to what is.
See that? Each one of those numbers signifies a separate cap cut. Look at those different colors I used. Look at the different colors. I used purple, pink, red, and green.
There are always diplomatic options. There are always a scheme of diplomatic options, but sometimes you.
Yeah, I got to get another.
You use a massive show of strength.
I got to get another notebook just for scrap.
One
Gotta get another scrap notebook just for the numbers show, the upcoming numbers show that I'm gonna do.
There has been some suggestion that the president might be open to talking with Maduro, which I find fascinating.
You see those numbers clearly?
Weeks and weeks of a military buildup here. He was asked about this over the weekend and suggested that he would at least be open to it. He says, I'll talk to anybody, anytime. I want to get the quote here. He said Venezuela would like to talk and that the U.S. may be having some discussions with Maduro as the buildup of forces occurs in the region. Is that all this is, a deterrent or a way to force Maduro to the table?
I think it's a bit of a psychological piece of theater, but I couldn't rule out a diplomatic channel opening up, or even the president engaging with Maduro himself. He has made it clear in many different circumstances that he will engage in personal diplomacy, even in circumstances where U.S. presidents or U.S. diplomats have not hitherto done.
On the Hill today, we heard Lindsey Graham say that this bill, with President Trump's blessing on Russia sanctions, will move forward. This would impose sanction on countries that trade with Russia.
Yeah, we finished this. We finished
What would it mean for the ongoing
Grandmaster piece?
That's obviously going to cause turbulence in both sets of talks, and both sets of leaders have made very clear how much they resent such secondary sanctions, especially when they believe that not as much pressure is being applied to Russia itself. And not that they're either one of them forcing that, but they certainly don't appreciate the pressure being put on them.
Well, as we round the bend here with this almost state visit tomorrow, what do we think will be the priority for the president going forward here? Will it be acknowledging Saudi Arabia's interest in the pathway, as you referenced, to a Palestinian state? Or will it be putting the squeeze on Vladimir Putin?
So look, I think this is a big celebratory sort of visit for both leaders. There are substantial gaps in what either one wants in the relationship. Not that they came to this visit thinking that they would close those gaps, but it's clear that the president remains very fixed on the issue of normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel. That's not in the cards at this point, and may not be in the cards for a very long time. And at the same time, the Crown Prince really wants something that he can take home that is a security guarantee, which again, he's not likely to get in the form that he wants, which would be a treaty. He is going to get at most the sort of written executive statement of intent. But they will still have a lot to celebrate, and I think there will be undoubtedly very significant commercial deals announced all along the way.
It's good to have you, Ambassador. Barbara Lee, former Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs in the Biden administration. We thank you for the insights. Coming up, a heated conversation that President Trump says caused him to blow his stack and lose his voice. Who was on the other end? And a new development of federal agents arriving in Charlotte, North Carolina. We'll discuss the Department of Homeland Security's response with our political panel next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
This is New York's only 24-hour source for world markets and breaking business news. Bloomberg 1130. Coming up, the latest market-moving headlines from Bloomberg. First, an update from our partners at CBS News. CBS News brief. A federal judge ruled today that grand jury materials must be turned over to James Comey's defense team. The former FBI director was indicted for lying to Congress, but the judge said there was a disturbing pattern of missteps by the prosecution. Legal analyst Laurie Levinson.
Grand jury proceedings are not more relaxed procedural and evidentiary standards. A prosecutor cannot make fundamental errors in presenting the case.
President Trump said today he's urging House Republicans to vote to release the full Epstein files because the issue has detracted from his accomplishments. On Capitol Hill, Caitlin Huey-Burns.
We're going to see a lot of Republicans on the House side vote this measure to release the file.
More Americans are falling behind on their energy bills. The latest survey finds past due balances jumped nearly 10% in the second quarter. CBS CBS News Brief, I'm Cammie McCormick. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, we do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. MTY Food Group, the owner of U.S. and Canadian restaurant chains such as Cold Stone Creamery, Wetzel's Pretzels, and Mr. Sub, says it's undergoing a strategic review and may sell itself. The United Nations Security Council has approved a resolution backing President Trump's peace plan with 13 votes in support, and Russia and China abstaining. Wall Street's looking ahead to NVIDIA earnings. This report will be picked over by investors increasingly uneasy over stratospheric AI.
Yeah, so this is the...
As for the broader earnings backdrop heading into NVIDIA, Cam Dawson is Chief Investment Officer at New Edge Wealth.
This is the coloring book that I have. I have a whole bunch of these. I bought 7 of these. And I got one that's 300 pages. I got a 300-page one, too.
Cam Dawson, Chief Investment Officer at New Edge Wealth. A down Monday to kick off the trading week. S&P today down 61, wrapping up the session at 66.72, down 0.9. The Dow down 1.2%, Nasdaq down 0.8%. I'm Charlie Pellet.
All right, let's go to the next image.
Business Flash.
Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. Alongside Laura Davison, I'm Joe Matthew. Thanks for joining us. We'll have more on today's top stories with our political panel coming up. Rick and Jeannie are with us. But first, the stories we're watching. Today's Power Brief. David Richardson, the Trump administration's top official at FEMA, resigned today after just 6 months on the job. Richardson had no emergency management experience when he took the role. Criticized extensively for FEMA's handling of the catastrophic July 4th floods, which killed more than 130 people in Texas. President Trump has repeatedly suggested FEMA be eliminated entirely and is launching an independent review council to weigh in on the fate of the agency. For now, FEMA's Chief of Staff, Karen Evans, is set to take over the vacated position on December 1st.
Next, an update on Chile's presidential election. Chilean arch-conservative Jose Antonio Cast prevailed over a field of right-wing candidates in the first round of elections yesterday. Cast is favored to beat communist Janet Jara in next month's runoff election. Chile has shifted to the right as the country grapples with a surge of clandestine migration, unprecedented violent criminal rates, and a sluggish economy.
This weekend saw multiple anti-ICE protests break out in parts of the country, with protesters marching in the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina, after an ICE crackdown kicked off in the city. There have reportedly been more than 130 people arrested just 2 days there after Border Patrol agents fanned out across Charlotte. And demonstrators also clashed with officers in Broadview, Illinois, right outside of Chicago, leading to multiple arrests there. The clashes captured live on air, after which the Department of Homeland Security responded with this post on X, quote, "Womp womp, cry all you want. These criminal illegal aliens aren't getting released. Like clockwork, violent rioters have arrived at the Broadview.
Let me know when you're back.
To demand the release of some of the worst human beings on planet Earth. Get a job. You imbecilic morons." End quote. Joining us now with their reaction to these stories and more, our lucky panel this evening, Bloomberg Politics contributors Rick Davis, partner at Stoneport Capital, Republican strategist alongside Democratic analyst Jeannie Shanzano, Democracy Visiting Fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ashton Center. Classy communications, Rick?
So you're saying there's a chance they get released? I mean, honestly, as a government agency, it's pretty shocking. They work for the people in America, the ones that they're actually calling morons. Imbeciles. They pay the taxes to pay their salaries. So I think that this is pretty outrageous behavior. I'm a little surprised there has been more pushback from the North Carolina delegation in places like that around the country when these kind of incidents occur. It's not the first time, we've seen this kind of pushback by the government.
Right.
People's rights to protest and things like that. Nothing better than good protest. Keep it nonviolent, but scream all you want.
Jamie, the other thing that has people riled up is Epstein. We ended the week throughout the weekend. Trump reversed position, and now this week is said to be characterized by that. Can you put this moment into context a little bit for us? How much will this actually matter, a month or two from now, and particularly in the midterms, just about a year from now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends a lot on what happens. I don't think that many of us could have predicted several months ago that we would still be talking about Epstein, Laura, and that's all we've been talking about. And I think part of it is the response, quite frankly, of the Speaker of the House keeping the House out for, 6 or more weeks, trying to avoid this discharge petition. Now it's coming down the pike. Now it looks like they have a veto-proof majority. The president does this 180. So I think part of what has kept this going is the response. I mean, it is still curious to me why the president hasn't just said to Pam Bondi, release the files. Obviously, or we suspect it's because there's something in there he doesn't want to see the light of day. So I think a lot depends. My guess now is that we probably get the vote out of the House, out of the Senate. The president probably signs, and then it gets stalled in the DOJ because they have now embarked very quickly on an active investigation under which they will hide the ability to release files.
Well, there was a lot of news coming out of the White House this weekend, including this 180 that the president wrote on Truth Social, his decision to urge Republicans to vote for the release of the Epstein files after having Lauren Boebert reportedly in the Situation Room last week to try to peel her off the discharge petition. So we're all in now. The president was asked about it by reporters earlier today in the Oval Office. Here's what he said.
I feel great. I was shouting at people because they were stupid about something having to do with trade in a country, and I straightened it out. But I blew my stack at these people.
All right, we need to qualify this. He showed up, Rick, with a voice that sounded like he had been yelling, and indeed, when he was asked, he said he blew his stack. This came after a pretty difficult weekend in which he came to this decision about Jeffrey Epstein. He made a lot of other news on Venezuela on down. Do we think he was yelling about trade over the weekend or something else?
Yep, you never know, right? Could have been yelling about trade and everything else. And as you point out, pretty tumultuous week leading into the weekend. And look, he couldn't have been too upset he was playing golf. I mean, like, when you get a day on the golf course, don't blow your stack unless it's over a 2-foot putt you missed. Right. So the reality is, they're under a lot of pressure at the White House right now. Things aren't going their way. They had a disastrous election. The Jeffrey Epstein thing keeps coming up to the top. You have a chance tomorrow where the entire House of Representatives votes to release these files, Republicans and Democrats. So this is a disaster for the president at a time when he's trying to celebrate this relationship with one of his best friends in the region, MBS, and it's just not going his way.
Hearing that this could be a unanimous vote?
Oh, sure. He has instructed the Republicans to vote for it, and the Democrats were all voting for it anyway. So what Republican is going to vote against the president's wishes?
Can't imagine.
They're just all going to, fold right in. Maybe there'll be a couple just so we don't say it was a unanimous vote.
Well, there's actually a couple things that are coming up here that could go against the president's wishes. There's a healthcare deal to potentially be worked out. There's this Russia sanctions bill that would be a check on Trump, as well as a funding deal, which Trump has not really wanted to engage on that. That's a lot on Congress's plate. There's only about 6 weeks left till the end of the year. Jamie, what does your crystal ball show on what Congress can actually get done? And, is Trump going to be happy with that work?
I think it's going to be very tough for Congress to move through these funding bills. They have to do it, and God willing, they're able to, but they've also got, as you mentioned, other things on their plate. What happens with healthcare is a big question. So far, we haven't heard really a feasible idea from the Republican side to combat what they see as the problems with Obamacare. Of course, we've got the NDAA. The list goes on and on. And in the middle of this all, they've got this Epstein vote. So it's a lot on Congress's plate, and they haven't been in for a long time. So I understand they're here this week, but I was curious as to why last week, or they went, what were they in, 1 day, 48 hours after being out last week? So they should be here for the remainder of the year and putting their nose to the ground, all the things they haven't been doing for the last several months for the American people.
If there's a blowout result in the House, Rick, what does that mean for the Senate? John Thune until now had no plan. There's no such thing as a discharge petition, right, in the upper chamber. Could he be forced simply by the numbers to bring this to the floor?
Well, same thing applies, right? Donald Trump has said Republicans should vote for this. And so you need 13 Republicans to cross over and get 60 votes to create the cloture that you need to pass this bill. And yeah, I can see that happening. I can see those Republicans crossing over because, again, you'll have all the Democrats voting to release these documents. And so he's actually creating pressure on himself by, encouraging Republicans to be for this right after he was encouraging Republicans to be against it. And so now it's all going to be on him, I think. I think it'll get out of the Senate.
Yeah. He said today he'd sign it.
Yeah, and he said he'd sign it. And so, none of this makes any sense. But again, this administration it's not even a taco Monday. It's like something totally different where he's just flip-flopped on this issue.
What do you make of this divorce that really became public with Marjorie Taylor Greene over the weekend? That's been brewing for some months. Is this, a tip of a broader trend here, or is this just one character who will be cast aside, as many others in Trump's inner circle have been in the past?
I know, it doesn't seem like that long ago we were talking about the divorce from his BFF Elon Musk, and now here he goes with Marjorie Taylor Greene. He seems to be losing his touch with nicknames. He was like Marjorie Taylor Brown, Trader Green. I mean, he was explaining what he meant by Brown. I think this is indicative of the fact that a lot of people in the MAGA sphere are unhappy with his policies. The H-1B visas, the fact that they're allowing students, Chinese students into the country, the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene has talked about, the Republicans don't have a concerted, focused program for healthcare. The fact that he's spending so much time, I mean, we're just talking a minute ago, he's going to be welcoming tomorrow another foreign leader, something else for somebody who was supposed to be focusing like a laser beam on the United States. He's very focused abroad. And of course, the person he's welcoming not that long ago was accused by our own president of masterminding the murder of a Washington Post reporter. So there's a lot the MAGA right is not happy about with Donald Trump, and I think his breakup with Marjorie Taylor Greene is indicative of more to come. Some people are saying these last 2 weeks, the wheels have come off Donald Trump's leadership of the MAGA movement.
Marjorie Taylor Greene says she's being doxxed now. The pizza deliveries, the prank pizza deliveries are coming. What is she in for after a breakup from Trump?
I mean, these are alligator tears. I mean, nobody has said or done the worst things. I mean, she was kicked off of her committees for the kind of violent rhetoric she was pursuing. And now she's apologizing. Now she doesn't want to be bothered. I mean, come on, get a life. I actually like all these things that Donald Trump's doing, is making the MAGA people upset. It's much more mainstream conservative republicanism. And keep doing it. Light a fire under that MAGA crowd. They should be for you no matter what you do.
This is the best to get good, I think, Laura.
Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzano, thank you both.
To learn more about everything we discussed here this evening and more, make sure to check out the Washington Edition newsletter. You've got a lot to catch up on from the weekend, and you can find it on the terminal and online. Thank you for joining us on Balance of Power. We'll meet you back here tomorrow alongside Laura Davis.
They're standing on the Hershey Highway.
Tomorrow at this time, right here on Bloomberg TV.
Standing on the Hershey Highway.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
It's 5:56 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. President Trump says he will approve the sale of F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia when he meets tomorrow with the kingdom's crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman. This week's marquee event set to be NVIDIA's earnings report on Wednesday, which could boost NVIDIA shares and lead the market higher or stop the rally in its tracks. As for the AI backdrop, Stephen Parker is co-head of global investment strategy at JP Morgan Chase Bank.
We think that there's still a long way to run in this AI trade. If you look back since the launch of ChatGPT, 75% of the returns, 80% of the earnings, and 90% of the capital spending growth of the S&P has been driven by AI-related companies. And so the question now is, are we facing a bubble?
Stephen Parker, co-head of the Global Investment Strategy at JP Morgan Chase Bank. NVIDIA shares today down 1.9%, a broader sell-off with the S&P down 61, drop there of 0.9, NASDAQ down 0.8%, and the Dow lower today by 1.2%. Bitcoin right now at 92,145. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg Radio, on demand, and in your podcast feed.
On the latest edition of the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast, a conversation with Peter Cheer, head of macro strategy at Academy Securities, on the markets.
Where do we stand on some of these momentum stocks, whether it's the data centers, AI, some of the energy companies chasing it? Is it a bit overdone? So I think you're seeing a little bit of rotation. I like the S&P 500 equal weight versus the NASDAQ 100 right now. And I think there's a little bit of concern that not just VIX is going up, but realized vol is actually going up faster than VIX. So there's some pressure on the markets that way. And the MOVE index, which gets a bit wonky, but that's more on the bond side, kind of an equivalent of VIX, that's up to around 80 from 65 a couple weeks ago. So I've seen a little bit of volatility, and that always brings up the fear that the risk parity crowd, those who like to balance commodities versus stocks versus bonds, may have to de-risk a little bit.
So where do we stand in terms of how exposed people are to negative surprises? We're going to get a lot of economic data this week. We're going to get earnings from NVIDIA. Feels like there's lots of catalysts out there.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of things in this market, it's, what do you want to call it, K-shaped or little I-shaped. There's a bunch of companies where expectations are going to be...
I didn't know about little I-shaped.
I like that. It's like a little eye. So you got the dot that's doing extremely well, and then the stick that's like, and maybe not great, maybe not bad. So I feel like part of the market's poised for really strong earnings. You're going to need that to continue momentum. And a bunch of others, I think it's almost going to be impossible to do poorly even on disappointment, just because the market still doesn't like it. I think energy is still one of the most hated sectors, oil and gas. I love that sector. I think that should be strong into year end and into next year. People realize the Trump administration is going to build out electricity production. They're going to enable it. They're going to allow some regulatory changes. And natural gas, oil, coal are all going to be big beneficiaries.
Hear the full conversation on the latest edition of the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Plus, listen anytime on the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
From the financial capital of the world, broadcasting across the globe, this is WBBR New York, Bloomberg 1130. Now an update from our partners at CBS News.
It's CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
I'm Cammie McCormick. A federal judge has lashed out at the Justice Department and its prosecution of former FBI Director James Comey, describing what the judge said was a disturbing pattern of missteps in seeking the indictment. CBS's Scott McFarland.
James Comey has denied wrongdoing and pleaded not guilty to making a false statement to Congress. What the judge has done here has ordered the grand jury materials be handed over to Comey's defense team. That is a rare thing for the judge in a 24-page ruling, since he has concerns about how the grand jury was conducted, some of the operations of the prosecutor, and gaps in time between the presentation of the evidence and the return of the grand jury indictment.
That prosecutor, a former White House aide, had been appointed just days before. The acting chief of FEMA has resigned.
I'm Peter King. Critics felt David Richardson had a credibility problem from the start. In one meeting with colleagues, he said he wasn't aware that the U.S. has an Atlantic hurricane season. Early on, he told employees that he alone would speak for the agency. When Texas was hit with deadly flooding in July, several FEMA officials told CBS News they were unable to reach him, and as a result, FEMA was delayed in deploying search and rescue teams.
Jeffrey Epstein survivors released a public service announcement today.
It's time to bring the secret out of the shadows. It's time to shine a light into the darkness.
And President Trump was asked about his decision, calling on House Republicans to demand the release of the Epstein files.
We've done a great job, and I hate to see that. From the great job we've done. So, also, we've already given 50,000 pages.
More than 130 people were arrested in the latest immigration crackdown, this time in Charlotte, North Carolina. Camila Montoya Galvez reports.
New Orleans appears to be the next target of the Trump administration's crackdown on illegal immigration.
Immigration Border Patrol is preparing to send as many as 200 federal agents to New Orleans to arrest people they suspect are in the country illegally.
Vicky Barker reports Britain has begun a crackdown on migration. British Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood announced
a significant reform to our migration system in modern times,
including fast-track deportations of asylum seekers convicted of crimes or of migrants who arrive illegally, returning some asylum seekers to their home countries if those countries are later deemed safe, and making others wait 20 years to apply for permanent residence here. Pop legend Paul McCartney will release a silent music track next month as part of a silent album to protest UK copyright law changes benefiting AI companies that would be free to use an artist's work. This is CBS News.
Sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Take the next step forward in your career with great benefits and an award-winning workplace. Apply at careers.progressive.com.
You could think you found your dream home online. The kitchen island looks perfect for your inner chef. The backyard, a paradise for your green thumb. And that extra room, hello, walk-in closet. But here's the twist. The lot next door just got rezoned for years of construction. And this stuff, yeah, you're going to be hearing a lot of that. Don't let your dream home turn into a nightmare. Work with the expertise and ethical training of a realtor. Here to guide and help protect you from the surprises you didn't see coming. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors. Right by you.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest. The last one I needed for my set. Shiny like the
Designer handbag of my dreams.
One of a kind. eBay had it, and now everyone's asking. Ooh, Richie Couture thinks you work. eBay has all the parts that took my color. No more annoying. Just beautiful.
Designs, each with a story. eBay. Themes, people, love.
Could an old tuberculosis vaccine help treat type 1 diabetes? Correspondent Michael Wallace reports.
People with type 1 diabetes have white blood cells that eat fats. Dr. Denise Sausman at Massachusetts General Hospital says the tuberculosis drug G, which has been around for 125 years, can teach those cells to eat sugar instead.
This drug does immunostimulation, and in that process is remolding how genes are expressed.
She has completed 2 long-term adult trials using BCG and is now launching a pediatric trial.
We want to show with this drug, it not only brings down the blood sugar, but it does it for months and years.
Michael Wallace, CBS News.
You'll soon be able to shop for more cars on Amazon. Ford is selling used vehicles on the e-commerce platform starting today, joining Hyundai in providing online options for those who don't want to go to the dealership. I'm Cammie McCormick, CBS News.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World's headquarters in New York, I'm Doug Prisner. Let's update top stories in market action. We had the equity market retreating today ahead of those earnings from NVIDIA. They are due Wednesday after the bell. Also, some anxiety today tied to the release of 2 readings on the labor market. We'll get those numbers on Thursday. Now, we know that the optimism surrounding AI combined with expectations of Fed rate cuts have really been the 2 main pillars of this bull market in stocks. Today, some weakness with the Dow down about 1.2%, S&P 500 down 0.9%, NASDAQ comp weaker by 0.8%. Now, some analysts were saying today the latest dip could basically swell into a full-blown correction of at least 10%. Today, the S&P 500 closed below that 50-day moving average for the first time in 139 sessions. And if you look at the NASDAQ market, the composite index is flashing signals of internal weakness. More of the index's members are trading now at 52-week lows as opposed to highs. Also, a lot of weakness today in the price of Bitcoin, down sharply from that October high of 126,000, currently around 92 grand. So this decline in Bitcoin has produced a loss in market value of around $600 billion. That's according to data compiled by Bloomberg. A lot of traders are anxious. They're trying to figure out what's going on. Here is Bloomberg's Mike McGlone, senior commodity strategist at Bloomberg Intelligence.
Bitcoin's been one of the worst performing major assets this year, particularly on a volatility adjusted basis. The Bloomberg Galaxy Crypto Index is down 10%. That's despite the S&P 500 up 15%. So I think they're finding out, yeah, that was great in the past when some of those early tech geeks and insiders made it. Well, now they're getting out because they realize for the space to go higher, number one, you're supporting the Trump administration. You're dependent on the Trump administration. That's what shifted. In the past, it was away from the system. So I think what we did with Trump getting elected and the ETFs getting launched, as we put in an enduring peak, like very similar to the dot-com bubble peak in 1999, 2000.
That is Bloomberg's Mike McGlone. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Doug Christian. This is Bloomberg.
Now, your weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Clear skies tonight with diminution wind, low 30 to 35. Some morning sun and increasing afternoon clouds on Tuesday, high only 45 to 50. Mostly cloudy, some showers around Tuesday night, low in the middle to upper 30s, a little cooler in the suburbs. Morning clouds and becoming partly sunny on Wednesday, high again 45 to 50. I'm Scott Kaplan with your 3-day forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
This is Bloomberg Law. Congress can have no say in making an office independent. I think all agencies need a degree of autonomy.
It really tests whether the amendments to the law have teeth.
Interviews with prominent attorneys and Bloomberg legal experts.
Joining me is constitutional law professor David Super, Bloomberg News Supreme Court reporter Greg Storr.
And analysis of important legal issues, cases, and headlines.
Apple's a walled garden. They don't license their technology.
That is a valid basis to dismiss the case.
Bloomberg Law with June Grosso from Bloomberg Radio.
Hey, what's up, G-Boo? Welcome back.
Bloomberg Law Show. I'm June Grosso. Ahead this hour, the Supreme Court agrees to review an immigrant's right to seek asylum at the border. Federal immigration agents start a new enforcement operation.
Hey, what do you think of the boys on the Hershey Highway?
Security advisor Michael Flynn is in settlement talks with the Justice Department over.
You see the Hershey Highway here? This is the Hershey Highway. Yeah, this is the Hershey Highway.
North Carolina over the weekend in the latest federal immigration crackdown in a Democratic city. Governor Josh Stein encouraged residents to stay and to report any unusual interactions with ICE.
Everyone wants to be safe in their communities, but the actions of too many federal agents are doing the exact opposite in Charlotte. We've seen masked, heavily armed agents in paramilitary armor driving unmarked cars, targeting American citizens based on their skin color, racially profiling and picking up random people in parking lots and off of our sidewalks, going after landscapers simply decorating a Christmas tree in someone's front yard, and entering churches and stores to grab people. This is not making us safer. It's stoking fear and dividing our community.
My guest is immigration law expert Leon Fresco, a partner at Holland & Knight. Leon, why the federal immigration crackdown in Charlotte?
Well, basically what's happened is the administration has decided that the pace of immigration enforcement is moving way too slowly for its liking. And so it's going to try to move its operations to cities where it can still yield large numbers of people with status, but nevertheless does not get the kind of friction that it has been getting in cities where there is both United States government and local government that is against the ICE immigration.
How do you like my art pieces here?
Places that ICE has decided to move operations to is Charlotte, North Carolina, because again, even though there is a lot of Democratic local government there in the city, nevertheless, it's still a more conservative area of the country. The courts are in a more conservative circuit, the Fourth Circuit, and so the idea is that ICE would move its operation there to try to, again, begin trying to establish precedent that it can use reasonable suspicion to apprehend people and, if necessary, place people into deportation proceedings. Meanwhile, actually having large numbers of people going in and doing fugitive operations as well. And so you have that, but then you do have a Democratic governor there in North Carolina, and you have a Democratic mayor, and so from that standpoint, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. If it'll play out where they try to operate with the same script as Chicago, or will it play out because the courts in Charlotte are not as progressive as the courts in Chicago were, that this would be a great place to establish precedent for the Trump administration, that they can use their reasonable suspicions and start apprehending people just who are generally walking or at suspicious locations around Charlotte.
In a case that went to the Supreme Court on the emergency docket, the contention was that ICE was making stops based on racial profiling. And the Supreme Court didn't stop them from doing that. So what are they trying to prove here?
Well, the difference is that in Chicago, there was an order of operations that had been established by the district court that basically was still having ICE reporting to the district court with regard to having the use of body cameras and having transparency with regard to each of its interactions with people, and trying to figure out if there really was reasonable suspicion for stops, or was it really all just racial profiling. And from that perspective, I believe that even though the daily check-ins with the district judge were not allowed any further, I do believe that perhaps there was this feeling that there had been too much resistance in Chicago, that it wasn't worth it to continue there. And so I think the idea is try to go to a jurisdiction that has similar yields of population in order to be able to apprehend people, get the numbers of deportation up. But that if that gets challenged, you would be in the Fourth Circuit, and the Fourth Circuit is just demonstrably more conservative than the Seventh Circuit, and then also the district judges in Chicago. And so the idea would be that potentially good precedent for the Trump administration could be established there with regard to how the apprehensions are to be done, how people are to be detained once they are apprehended, and the deportation of these people once they are both apprehended and detained. And so I believe that's what they're trying to accomplish here in Charlotte, but we're going to have to wait to see if it really operates in practice.
The Border Protection Commander, Gregory Pavino, who is the face of Border Patrol and has led the operations in LA, Chicago, and now Charlotte. Well, he admitted in a deposition that he'd lied when he said he was hit by a rock before he threw a canister of tear gas. Did it seem like he sort of left Chicago because a district judge was on to him?
Again, this is all part of, they're going to try to yield success in operations where they feel they can yield success. And I do think it looks like the operational crew that had started the operation in Chicago has moved into Charlotte for this operation that they're calling Charlotte's Web. And they're trying to basically operate with these reasonable suspicion-based stops where they can say, we're using the criteria given by Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh, that as long as they are brief and they are contextual and they're not 100% race-based, but that they have other factors in them, such as potentially known presence in certain locations and known types of jobs that people are congregating in, where large yields of population of people without status might be done, that those might be considered reasonable suspicion. And so as long as they follow that guidance, it appears that they'll be able to engage in these operations. And then the question will be, would the Attorney General in North Carolina file anything that would actually challenge this? Would they end up getting similar results from Chicago, where these operations ended up being very closely scrutinized by the courts, basically every single apprehension? Or are they going to be allowed to establish a precedent in Charlotte, which they can then take to other locations along the south, such as Memphis and New Orleans and other places, Atlanta, where they might be able to try to get different results than what had been yielded in Chicago and Los Angeles?
Let me ask you this. Are there any Republican cities with large numbers of immigrants who are possibly there illegally. Are there any Republican cities that the Trump administration can go into, or is it only Democratic cities?
Well, I mean, this is the issue is many of the largest cities in America do not have Republican mayors. So that's one of the problems. They may have Republican governors. They may have Republican attorney generals. So you're thinking of, for instance, in Texas, there's a lot of cities where, you know, you have Democratic mayors, but you have the Republican governor of Texas. You have the Republican attorney general. But in terms of big cities, I mean, maybe you have Dallas, might be one, or Fort Worth might be another, Oklahoma City might be another, but it's not really a large group of big cities that have Republican mayors. And so I think there's some stats that says maybe 8 out of the largest 50 cities have Republican mayors. And the 3 biggest ones are Fort Worth, Dallas, and Oklahoma City. So maybe they will go there, but the truth is ICE is already operating pretty heavily in Texas. And so there's not really much more that ICE can be doing in Texas. With regard to Oklahoma City, I don't know, maybe they will try to go there, but that hasn't been on the list of places there I think to go to at the moment.
There was a story that, you know, they're looking into having an ICE facility on Staten Island. That's led to speculation that after Zoran Mamdani takes office as mayor of New York, that the administration is going to send ICE agents into New York City the way it has in Chicago and LA and Charlotte.
I'm not saying this as part of any inside knowledge. I'm just saying this as part of just knowledge generally of how this system works. Is you would never try to use the Coast Guard facility on Staten Island to hold detainees unless they 100% happen to be from New York City. And the reason for that is because previously the detainees from New York used to get sent to New Jersey. And the reason they would get sent to New Jersey, one, it was obviously cheaper. 2, logistically, there was more capacity. And 3, the Second Circuit is considered normally more liberal than the Third Circuit. Even though Third Circuit has been liberal in some instances, normally the Third Circuit is considered a more conservative court than the Second Circuit, so that once you detain people in New York City and you move them over to the Third Circuit, you're much more likely to get a conservative opinion in whether it's a detention case, a removal case, or anything else. Putting them in Staten Island then subjects you not just to the Second Circuit, but also to the Southern District of New York. And the Southern District of New York is a very, very progressive court. It's not at all like almost any other court in America, New York. And so it's very, very unlikely that any good case law would come out of detaining people in Staten Island. And so the only reason you would do it is to say, we are going to have a major crackdown in New York City, and this is space that we want in order to engage in that crackdown.
Well, I hope you're right about that, Leon. Coming up next on the Bloomberg Law Show, the Supreme Court agreed today to review an immigrant's right to seek asylum at the border. Remember, you can always get the latest legal news by listening to our Bloomberg Law podcast. You can find them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and at Bloomberg.com/podcast/law. I'm June Grosso, and you're listening to Bloomberg.
Every weeknight, your favorite Bloomberg podcasts are on Bloomberg Radio.
Discussing the Federal Reserve's latest moves.
Immigration has become a hot topic in the U.S. Tune in weekdays at 7 for the best from Odd Lots, The Big Take, Everybody's Business, and all of our podcasts.
Why we're in an AI bubble and what the danger is.
The Podcast Spotlight, weeknights at 7. We learn about a wide variety of subjects on Bloomberg 1130. Context changes everything.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Google today unveiling a new AI-powered travel site to book flights and hotels, allowing users to describe what they're looking for and compare in a conversational way. That shares of online travel giant Expedia down nearly 8%. Booking, the owner of Priceline, Kayak, and more down 5%. TripAdvisor, 4% lower. Elsewhere on Wall Street, it was a dismal day for the markets. All the major averages down about 1%. The Dow today down 557. The Nasdaq down 193, and the S&P lost 62. That's on jitters ahead of some important data coming out this week, including the shutdown-delayed September jobs report. Also, earnings from AI chipmaker NVIDIA, a bellwether for the AI spending boom. Also, earnings from retail giants like Walmart, Target, Home Depot, and Lowe's. That should give investors some insight into the strength or even the weakness of the U.S. consumer during the summer's third quarter. Tom Busby, Bloomberg Radio.
Hey, Val.
Yes, David.
Which custodian is the #1 choice for helping RIAs thrive?
A comprehensive search reveals one obvious match: Schwab Advisor Services.
Huh. Tell me about them.
My algorithm suggests they're an even better guide than me.
Go on.
With all the wealth services, technology, and support your firm needs, the difference is so obvious. It's Schwabvius.
I appreciate it, Val.
My pleasure. Dive deeper at schwabvius.com. Pinpointing the genetic changes that predispose us to disease. Identifying the roots of mental illness. Treating congenital anomalies even before birth. At Boston Children's Hospital, we're investing in children's health today to ensure the well-being of adults tomorrow. As home to the world's largest pediatric research enterprise and more than 260 specialty programs, Boston Children's is where the world comes for answers. Learn more at bostonchildrens.org. Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Skies will be clear tonight. Winds will die down. Lows dropping to the lower to middle 30s. Sunshine to start today, Tuesday, then increasing clouds. High in the middle to upper 40s. Some showers around Tuesday night. Low in the middle to upper 30s. Morning clouds and becoming partly sunny on Wednesday. High again in the middle to upper 40s. I'm Scott Kaplan with your 3-day forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Will the Republicans retain the House in 2026?
Is that a question?
Yes, it is.
Well, recently on IBKR Forecast Trader, yes was 30 cents. No was 68. If you're right, you get $1 per contract.
When's the payout?
After the 2026 elections, but you earn an interest-like incentive coupon daily, and you can sell anytime the price works for you.
So, if I buy yes at 30 and then later buy no at 10, that's 60 cents profit?
Exactly. $1 back, 40 cents cost, 60 cents profit.
Where do I do this?
At IBKR Forecast Trader. Open an account at ibkr.com/elect.
Restrictions apply. Forecast contracts not suitable for all investors. Missed the top headlines on Bloomberg Radio? Get the latest news when you want it, updated continuously throughout the day with Bloomberg News Now. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app and anywhere you get your podcasts.
The breaking news out of Washington is constant.
The White House announces a reduction in tariffs.
The conversation about affordability is getting louder, and Bloomberg 1130 has the experts to bring you every angle.
Saudi friends visiting Washington.
The Senate is heading for a health care vote next month. Breaking political headlines from the team that knows D.C.
House Speaker Mike Johnson joins us now.
Listen on Apple CarPlay or Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. And always on Bloomberg 1130. Context changes everything. This is Bloomberg Law with June Grosso from Bloomberg Radio.
The Supreme Court has agreed to review the policy of denying migrants the chance to apply for asylum if they haven't set foot on American soil. In the practice known as metering, border agents turn back potential asylum seekers before they cross into the U.S. to limit the number seeking asylum. The Ninth Circuit ruled that metering violates the migrants' constitutional rights and a federal law requiring officials to screen anyone who shows up at ports of entry seeking asylum. The Trump administration appealed that decision to the Supreme Court. I've been talking to immigration attorney Leon Fresco of Holland and Knight. Leon, there are a couple of legal fights going on over asylum.
There's a lot of different parts of the asylum system that are all eventually going to work their way up to the Supreme Court. The most important one not being this case, but just being generally the case that will discuss whether by executive fiat the president has the authority to basically end asylum in the United States for people who cross the border illegally. That case is working its way up, and there's DC case law talking about that the may not have the authority to unilaterally do that, to just say if you cross the border illegally, you can't get asylum. This is slightly different. This then would say, because when you have that discussion that we just talked about, can you get asylum if you cross the border illegally? There's a talking point that then gets offered by the people who don't want individuals crossing the border illegally to get asylum. They say, why don't you do it the right way and go to port of entry? So everybody says, well, gee, that certainly makes a lot of sense. Do it the right way. Go to a port of entry. Don't just run across the border and cause chaos. Present yourself to someone who's there, who's prepared, ready to examine the case, etc. So far, so good. But there have been policies in both the Trump administration and the Biden administration that say, hold on, we're not going to let you go in through the port of entry either, because whether it was COVID or just they don't want people going through the port of entry, we don't want that either. We don't want anybody coming in from the southern border asking for asylum. So here then comes the question. If that human being had come across the port of entry and entered in the U.S. side of the port of entry, we'd be in the same situation we were in when we're talking about the person who illegally crosses. Then we're just in that Supreme Court land that we don't know where it's going to end up, which is, can the executive by fiat ban people from coming in for asylum? Okay, there's that one. But this is different. This is what if the U.S. gets to you physically while you're on the Mexican side of the port of entry. So your body never makes it to the U.S. Are you still eligible to apply for asylum? Or has the U.S. basically made it impossible for you to go into court, because it would be the same thing as if you were saying, why can't I apply for asylum from New Zealand or from Australia? I don't get it. I should just be allowed to just announce that I have an asylum claim to some American at an embassy in Australia or in New Zealand. I should be allowed to do that, and if I'm not allowed to do that, I should be able to sue in court. That's not allowed. You can't, if you live in New Zealand, just go to a U.S. embassy and ask for asylum. Or you can't, if you live in Australia, go to a U.S. embassy and ask for asylum. And if they say no, go to a federal court. But the Ninth Circuit said that if you get stopped on the Mexican side of the U.S. port of entry, if you're trying to arrive in the United States, and the only reason you don't arrive is because the U.S. stops you from arriving, that would still be considered an arrival in the United States for the purpose of triggering all of these asylum questions about whether you're eligible to apply for asylum, whether the U.S. can't let you stay in Mexico, they have to bring you in. If you have a credible fear, they have to let you make your case in the United States. And so that's really the issue now.
They're not using this metering process, so why is the Trump administration bothering to appeal it to the Supreme Court?
The Trump administration decided, because I think what happens is they're concerned that the current administrative ban that they have on asylum might be taken away. And if that happens, then they're going to try to say, well, go in through the port of entry, but again, limiting who can come in through the port of entry. So they're going to want the discretion to be able to say, look, we're letting in some people through the port of entry to apply for asylum each day. But if you're not one of the 50 people, let's say, because they're going to try to make the number low, if you're not one of the 50 people that's letting them in, just because we apprehend you on the Mexican side of the border doesn't mean you've now succeeded in being able to make an asylum claim. And so the Ninth Circuit has said, yes, that person should be given the right to apply for asylum. But what subsequently happened is the Biden administration took away that policy, and so the immigrants' rights advocates are saying this is moot, this is not a thing anymore, because the Trump administration really isn't relying on this. They're relying on the nobody gets asylum in the southern border, period, executive fiat. They're not relying on this argument anymore about we've apprehended you at the port of entry. So it's moot. You shouldn't decide this. But the Trump administration is trying to say it's not moot, and it looks like the Supreme Court has agreed that it's not moot, that they want to actually come to a decision, which I believe, if they've taken cert, means they're very likely to overturn the Ninth Circuit's decision that says that if you are in Mexico and trying to arrive in the U.S., you have basically succeeded in presenting yourself for an asylum claim. I think they will overturn that, it seems, and they will say, no, your body actually has to make it into the U.S. in order to trigger your rights to apply for asylum. Otherwise, where do we draw the line? Again, can you do this in Australia? Can you do this in New Zealand, et cetera, et cetera?
I don't think there are too many people in Australia or New Zealand right now trying to get asylum in the United States.
Or period. You know, if you're coming in and you're 2 miles out from the U.S. and we interdict you, does that mean you've succeeded and now you can apply for asylum? And so those are the tough questions here.
So let's turn to this en banc ruling from the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. It's a little confusing. So this goes back to the situation where Judge Boasberg was trying to figure out whether or not the Trump administration was sending Venezuelans to El Salvador, to that prison in El Salvador. And he asked them to turn around whatever flights are on their way. And the question is whether they lied to him.
Correct. This is sort of two separate cases. The first case is about the substance of whether a habeas petition could be used to challenge the fact that a law from 1798 called the Alien Enemies Act allowed the government to basically identify anyone in file was a foreign national and send them to El Salvador, so long as they thought that person was an enumerated gang member from Tren de Aragua, Venezuela, because they said that that was an alien enemy. So there was a lot of things to review conceivably. Are you an American or not? Are you Tren de Aragua or not? Does this allow you to get sent to El Salvador? All of these things. And that's still working its way through the courts about the constitutionality of all of this. But what the Supreme Court ultimately said is a habeas in D.C. is the wrong place to do this. Or an Administrative Procedure Act case in D.C. is also the wrong place to do this. You've got to do it in the district in which the person was detained. And so they sent those cases to Texas and other places where the people who were going to be sent to Venezuela were actually detained. And, you know, there's a lot of debate about how much time you have to file one of these cases, et cetera. So that's case number one, the substance. But case number two, the sort of what I would call the ancillary part of the case, would be that the judge was upset with how the substance was argued, even though the judge apparently doesn't have jurisdiction to use any of the substance anymore in this case. The judge said, when I thought I did, and when everybody thought I did, you, the government, engaged in actions that I'm worried violated contempt of court. And so then there was an appeal about, well, can the court continue along these lines of trying to hold the government in criminal contempt and to identify the officials who the court is concerned may or may not have made misrepresentations to the court about flights to El Salvador that were or weren't happening or should or shouldn't have been happening, and then they were potentially stonewalling the court about not wanting to give information about who did what, who said what, etc. And so what happened was there was a appeal where the government said, look, we're done with the district court judge, Judge Boasberg here, and we're trying to get what's called a writ of mandamus, saying we don't want to be part of this anymore. We don't want to have to talk to Judge Boasberg about identifying responsible officials, naming them, saying what they did, etc. What happened was there was a 2-1 decision from the Court of Appeals in D.C. saying that, okay, fine, Judge Boasberg, we're going to grant what's called a writ of mandamus, which is very, very rare, where the court basically stops another judge from doing something. And what the D.C. Circuit said 2-1 is, we're going to just stop the judge from trying to identify responsible officials in order to maybe hold them in criminal contempt. So then the plaintiffs in the case, who are the people representing the El Salvadoran deportees who are Venezuelan, they petitioned for rehearing and bond, saying that's not the court should be able to hold the government in contempt. And so the issue again in this case was, well, was the panel correct to issue this writ of mandamus against the judge? And the en banc panel did say, yes, the panel was correct in issuing mandamus against the judge, but there were several judges in the D.C. circuit who expressed serious concerns about what they felt was government misconduct. And so they said, look, let Judge Boasberg continue on with his contempt inquiry. And yes, he can't go and start trying to go through every single part of who knows what and who did what. But at the end of the day, his specific lawyers that were in front of him did lie to him. He can and should be able to move forward with a contempt proceeding. And so we're going to have to wait and see if that actually ends up being the case or not. But he's going to have they're going to go back and look at that specific issue. So maybe not go through and start sanctioning all of the government officials that may have been involved in the deportation itself, but at least the lawyers who went in, if there were any that actually made misrepresentations to Judge Boasberg, those might actually end up being in contempt. And so the issue still continues, oddly enough, in this bizarre context.
It is a long and winding case. Thanks as always, Leon. That's Leon Fresco of Holiday Night. Coming up next, the Justice Department's sudden settlement talks with former Trump officials. This is Bloomberg.
This is New York's only 24-hour source for world markets and breaking business news. Bloomberg 1130. Coming up, the latest market-moving headlines from Bloomberg. First, an update from our partners at CBS News.
CBS News brief. A judge has raised questions about the government's conduct in the James Comey case. He's ordered grand jury materials turned over to the former FBI director's defense team. Legal analyst Laurie Levinson says the Justice Department is asking for a stay of that order.
I don't know that the will find a particularly sympathetic ear for their argument, but they're to run this one up the ladder because they're quite concerned about allegations that the Comey indictment should be thrown out.
Comey's accused of lying to Congress. He's denied that. President Trump said today he wants House Republicans to vote for the release of the Epstein files because it's become a distraction.
If they can do whatever they want. Give them everything. Sure I would. Let the Senate look at it, let anybody look at it. But don't talk about it too much because honestly, I don't want to take it away from us.
CBS News Brief, I'm Cammie McCormick.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York, I'm Doug Krisner. Let's update market action and top business stories. Equities retreated today ahead of the earnings from NVIDIA after the bell on Wednesday. Also, a bit of anxiety tied to the release of two readings on the labor market. We'll get those numbers Thursday. And we know that the optimism around AI, along with expectations for more Fed rate, really been the underpinnings of this bull.
Just about finished with this image.
With the Dow down about 1.2%, S&P 500 weaker by 0.9%, NASDAQ comp down today by 0.8%. We have seen increased doubt around the sustainability of AI CapEx. Strong NVIDIA earnings may go a long way to quell that uncertainty. As I mentioned, the numbers are due Wednesday after the bell. We have a preview from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
NVIDIA's report will be closely watched as investors are uneasy over high AI valuations. Cameron Dawson is Chief Investment Officer at New Edge Wealth.
NVIDIA has shown a very consistent ability to jump over that high bar. Earnings are expected to grow 60% this quarter, and this is the third quarter 2026 earnings for them on a fiscal basis. So NVIDIA is very much living in the future.
The chipmaker is widely expected to deliver another earnings beat in New York. Charlie Pellet, Radio.
And today we learned that Peter Thiel's hedge fund, Thiel Macros, sold off its entire stake in NVIDIA last quarter. Today, shares in NVIDIA were down about 1.8%, and Bitcoin down sharply from that October high, 126,000 right now, 91,900. And in that decline, Bitcoin has lost about $600 billion in total market value, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. The bleeding ear has been a factor in keeping the equity market on the back foot. Right now, the early trading in Sydney is negative with the ASX 200 down about 0.7%. WTI crude oil at the moment at 59.70. We're off about 0.3% here in the electronic session. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Doug Prisner. This is Bloomberg.
Thursday, September jobs data finally arrives. The unemployment rate 4.3%.
It's about moving forward with the Fed.
Delayed by the government shutdown. Will the numbers affect the Fed's December decision?
The labor market is now forefront and center for the Federal Reserve.
The September jobs report on Bloomberg surveillance.
Real infos to the Bloomberg screen.
Thursday morning at 8:30. Listen on Apple CarPlay or Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. And always on Bloomberg 1130. Context changes everything.
Even the most disciplined investors face tough choices in volatile markets. The danger? Abandoning portfolios at the wrong time. While many strategies overlook human behavior, Principal Asset Management designs retirement portfolios that help investors stay invested. Our decades of expertise show that portfolio abandonment can derail years of planning and undermine the most sophisticated strategies when volatility strikes. Principal Asset Management, helping participants stay actively invested. Learn more at principalam.com.
Confidence is knowing you're ready to handle whatever comes your way. That's what it feels like to take on your workday with Cintas. They make sure your AEDs are up to date, your fire extinguishers are tested and inspected, your floor mats are cleaned and delivered, and your workwear looks good, feels good, and is freshly laundered with the Cintas Apparel Plus program. So are you ready to take on today? Visit Cintas.com and get ready for the workday.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Clear skies across the tri-state area tonight. Winds will die down, low 30 to 35. Morning sun, then increasing clouds on Tuesday, high in the middle to upper 40s. Showers likely Tuesday night, lows only drop to the middle to upper 30s. Early clouds, then skies become partly sunny on Wednesday, high again getting up to 45 to 50. I'm Scott Kaplan with your 3-day forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Bloomberg Radio, on demand, and in your podcast feed.
On the latest Balance of Power podcast, we talked with James Jeffrey, former U.S. ambassador to Iraq and Turkey, about President Trump's meeting this week with the Saudi Crown Prince.
Saudi Arabia is a hugely important country in the region for U.S. relations. This is even bigger than Saudi Arabia. It's locking in a regional security, trade, and diplomatic coalition that will build on the defeat first of Daesh, the Islamic State, about 7 years ago, and now the defeat of Iran, its proxy empire over the past 2 years, to allow the region finally to enjoy peace, prosperity, political independence, and allow the United States slowly to back out of the region. So lots at stake. The Saudis, like the Israelis, like the Turks, like a couple of other countries, are central to it. Trump is pushing forward on all of these fronts.
And what does Saudi Arabia get out of this visit, Ambassador?
First of all, acknowledgement. This is almost a state visit, although technically the Crown Prince is the Crown Prince, not the King. The King is still there. But he's also getting to build on the Biden fist bump forgiveness for the Khashoggi case. But more importantly, he needs economic coordination. He needs U.S. investment. He's promised $600 billion in Saudi investment in the U.S., and that's a good deal for Saudi Arabia, given the way our economy is cooking. But also, he wants progress on a pathway, that's the word we're using now, to a Palestinian state.
Hear the full conversation on the latest edition of the Balance of Power podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Plus, listen anytime on the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. In a major concession, President Trump says he would approve the sale of American-made F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia. That's ahead of a White House meeting tomorrow with the kingdom's crown prince. Right now, Israel is the only Middle East nation that has those jets. Looking to undercut Eli Lilly's price drop on its popular Zepbound obesity med, Novo Nordisk, the maker of Wegovy, is slashing prices on that drug to just $199 a month to start for customers who pay for them directly. After 2 months, though, the price will go up to $350 a month.
Wall Street took a beating today ahead of the long-delayed September
All right,
report.
I'm finished.
And earnings this week, chipmaker Nvidia and big box retailers like Walmart, Target, and Home Depot. All the major averages today down about 1%. The Dow lost 557, the Nasdaq down 193, the S&P lower by 62. And just in time for the holidays, Cinnabon is selling scented wrapping paper that smells like cinnamon rolls. Tom Busby, Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Law with June Grosso from Bloomberg Radio.
The Justice Department has been discussing settlements with two former officials from Donald Trump's first term who, like the president, claim they're owed multi-million-dollar payouts from the U.S. government as victims of politically motivated actions. Trump's first national security advisor, Michael Flynn, and former senior White House lawyer Stefan Passantino have been in touch with the Trump administration since at least late summer. The negotiations mark a shift from the Justice Department's position during the Biden administration, where government lawyers successfully fought both cases. Joining me is Bloomberg News reporter Zoe Tillman, who's been looking into these negotiations. So, Zoe, why are Flynn and Passantino suing the government?
So they have two very different lawsuits stemming from two very different, big investigations surrounding Trump and Trump's world. Michael Flynn is the older case. He was Trump's first national security advisor for a very brief moment in time, and then faced prosecution by the special counsel Robert Mueller in connection with the Russia probe, where he was charged with lying to investigators pretty early on in that investigation, sort of pre-Mueller's appointment, about his contacts during the 2016-2017 transition period with a Russian official. And at first, Michael Flynn pleaded guilty, entered a plea deal, admitted lying, but then changed course dramatically. Hard 180. He brought on new lawyers, Sidney Powell, who would go on to become sort of a very bold-faced name, but was not really in the spotlight at the time, and backtracked on that and fought the prosecution and wound up having his case dismissed by then AG Bill Barr. He was subsequently full-out pardoned by Trump near the end of his first term. So Michael Flynn sued and said this was a malicious prosecution, this was an unlawful targeting of me, and he was seeking $50 million for the harm that he suffered for that. So Trump loses the election. January 6th happens. There's then a congressional investigation into January 6th, and Stefan Passantino is a lawyer for a number of witnesses who are called as part of that investigation. I mean, some of them are being paid by a Trump-affiliated PAC, and his clients include Cassidy Hutchinson, who was a former White House aide to Mark Meadows, and he represented her, and then he didn't represent her. She gets new lawyers and goes on to testify in front of a nationwide televised audience, that among other things she heard Trump lunged at someone in a car on January 6th. It was sort of this very dramatic, explosive moment. And Passantino subsequently was accused of sort of urging Cassidy Hutchinson to mislead, if not be untruthful to a claim that he has flat out denied. So he filed suit later saying that the committee and staff leaked information about his work with Cassidy to promote this false narrative about him, that he committed misconduct, an ethical breach. So we have sort of two lawsuits that, on paper are very unconnected, but of the same feather.
The Biden administration fought both these cases and won?
That's right. Part of why this is something we were looking at was they both started by filing administrative claims with the agencies before going to court. And it's a process that's sort of gotten fresh attention right now because it's the same process that Donald Trump is pursuing.
All right, so I
at
did.
the administrative level, trying to get.
I did 2 images.
Also, because he says he was wronged by government. So, Flynn and Passantino start with that process. They say they don't hear back within the 6-month or so period, so they sue. And
I did 2 images.
President Biden fights both of these cases. And the says these are, not merit cases, they're legally deficient, they're procedurally deficient, and in both instances, the Justice Department wins. They get an order dismissing Flynn's case, they get an order dismissing Cosentino's case. In Flynn's case,
I did this one.
says, I give you leave to file an amended complaint. You can come back and try again. So this happens at the very end.
I did this one with the green apple.
Obviously, there's an election. Trump comes back to office. So Flynn's case is not dead in the water. And his lawyers asked for extensions, saying, Trump is releasing new information about the Mueller probe.
And
More time, did our complaint, and the judge says, fine. DOJ doesn't oppose this. And at the same time, Cosentino, he appeals. He appeals his loss to the 11th Circuit. Sort of interesting about this timeline is
let's see if I could find it.
DOJ under Trump continues to fight his case. So they filed their brief in the 11th Circuit saying the lower court judge's order should be upheld. This was not a meritorious case. The judge didn't make any errors. So, both cases are sort of either in limbo or continually, being opposed by the Justice Department. And what we found then was by September, there are filings in both dockets.
I did this one.
180. DOJ.
This is the second image I did.
With both of them. And this is the first time in either case that we
You see the second image?
that type of disclosure. And, there's very little information on what's happening, what's being discussed. In both cases,
This is the second image I did.
we're now newly in settlement talks. And this is the moment when I also share that there is a common feature of these cases, which is that
And now I'm looking for a third image to start on because I still have some time before I got to go and get the tickets.
campaign organization. He had been part of Sidney Powell's team representing Michael Flynn back in the day. Does work for a number of conservative, Republican, right-leaning clients. So, there is this common feature in both cases, which is the same lawyer, has a relationship with the president and this administration. By the end of the summer, is in settlement talks with the government.
Did anything happen to change this, or that's not known?
There's nothing in the
Yeah, we're going to do this one.
indicate that, and so far in our reporting, that hasn't, been confirmed. We just know that this is sort of an ongoing effort, dialogue, issue that the president and his administration have been very concerned about consistently since he took office, which is, working backwards and trying to undo by, high-level to mid-level government actors across the federal government that they see as
This one we're going to use the colorful pens.
Political bias.
Colorful ink. You see the colorful ink I got over here?
It was a new development in these cases, but a continuation of something that
This one we're going to use the
for
pens.
this administration.
So the Justice Department is negotiating the deal. Is there any oversight over the Justice Department's decision? Let's say the Justice Department tomorrow says $50 million to Michael Flynn. Any oversight at all?
Like most settlements in court, is a final act of discretion by a judge when they move to dismiss a case when there's a settlement. That's not something that they can do unilaterally. But there is very little room for judges to really probe that process unless they feel like, something happened on their watch, on the docket that requires intervention. But just the fact of a settlement to resolve civil litigation, no matter how far along things are, this is certainly not the first administration to reverse the position, the litigating position of the U.S. government when administrations change, right? Party that happens. It's not as if there's some indication that
These are actually special pens. These are bold, 1.6 millimeter.
development that
These are special coloring pens.
evidence of sort of a broader policy approach by the administration, which is,
They have a very fat tip.
as these major
They have a very fat tip, so you can do a lot of nice colorings with them.
information to make it public. Justice Department investigations, prosecutions, there's sort of been this constant drumbeat of how does the administration use the tools of government and, in some cases, taxpayer dollar to, Trump sees as these wrongs.
This year, the Trump Justice Department reached a nearly $5 million settlement with the family of Ashley Babbitt, who was shot during the January 6th riots at the Capitol. Before Trump took office, had the Biden administration been fighting that lawsuit?
Yes, that's another one where, under the previous administration, the Justice Department had been seeking dismissal of, I believe it was some of the claims in that case. There was a pending motion to dismiss, and at a certain point, that position changed, and the administration, once Trump took office, entered into negotiations with the family and their attorneys to reach a resolution. That process is not public. The information came out about that only because there was sort of an ancillary dispute related to lawyers who had been involved in the case that landed on the docket ahead of that settlement being announced. So there was sort of an early preview of the fact that it was happening. But there was no obligation by the government to share what it's talking about, why it's decided to enter into negotiations. And I think it's also, I should say, the fact of settlement talks is not a guarantee of a deal. There can be talks that don't yield an agreement in the end. So we don't know how far along the talks are with Flynn and Pasatino. We do know from court filings that the government put a hold on whatever was happening. So there's been a delay up until now from the past month. So there's, a lot of secrecy built into this process by design.
There are claims with a political connection to Trump and January 6th that the Justice Department is fighting.
That's right. And it's been a fascinating dynamic to watch unplay because throughout the campaign, President Trump really took up the cause of January 6th defendants as his own and expressed support for them, endorsed the thinking on the right that these prosecutions were unwarranted, overblown. And on day one, Trump signed blanket clemency for those who have been convicted, charged, sentences commuted. All but I think a handful of people received clemency. But then there's been a bit of a break, and a lawyer for a number of these folks, named Mark McCloskey, he told us that they've been surprised and frustrated that when they've gone and filed administrative claims seeking damages for everything from, malicious prosecution, wrongful prosecution, to the conditions of their imprisonment, he says they've been rejected, at least in the first round or so.
Once we find out more, it will be interesting to see where they drew the line, if indeed they do draw the line. Thanks, Zoe. That's Bloomberg reporter Zoe Tillman. I'm June Grosso. Stay with us. Today's top stories and global business headlines are coming up right now.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is WBBR New York. 11:30. Coming up, the latest market-moving headlines from Bloomberg. First, an update from our partners at CBS News.
Will we see them finally?
Bipartisan lawmakers want these files in full.
Federal judge strongly criticizes Comey.
He has concerns about how the grand jury was conducted.
Acting FEMA chief out.
Whose tenure was as brief as it was controversial.
This is the CBS World News Roundup, late edition. I'm Christopher Cruz. A 180 by President Trump. Opposing the release of the Epstein files, he now says Republicans should vote to force the Justice Department to turn them over. CBS's Nicole Killian is on Capitol Hill.
Only a handful of Republicans actually signed on to this discharge petition, but Congressman Massey, who is the Republican co-sponsor of it, has said he believes that 100 House Republicans or more could ultimately vote in favor of this.
The House will likely vote tomorrow on that discharge petition.
I'm Peter King. Danielle Bensky says she expects to see her 17-year-old self released.
21 years later, she tells CBS's The Takeout she and other survivors need a full accounting of what happened.
Without the transparency, we don't even know what the process to accountability is.
Bensky says it's not a political issue. Her message to Congress and the president.
It is a human issue. It is a moral issue. It is what I would ask my tiny 5-year-old son to do. Just do the right thing.
A federal magistrate judge today ordered the Justice Department to turn over grand jury materials to the indicted former FBI Director James Comey. CBS's Scott McFarland has that.
This is a rare thing. A federal judge ordering grand jury materials handed over to a criminal defendant. In a 24-page ruling, the judge explained his rationale, saying there's concerns about how the grand jury was conducted, some gaps in time between the handing over of the materials and the handing back of the indictment.
The acting FEMA administrator, David Richardson, has quit. CBS's Nicole Skanga says he's been on thin ice for some time.
Richardson's resignation was a matter of when, not if. For weeks, there have been rumors circulating that he was due to leave FEMA by the end of hurricane season. Hurricane season ends next week.
Richardson had been criticized for being mostly out of sight in the days after the deadly Texas floods last July that killed at least 136 people. The UN Security Council today approved a U.S. plan for Gaza that authorizes an international stabilization force that would provide security in the territory. The plan envisions a possible future path to an independent Palestinian state. The vote was 13-0, with Russia and China abstaining. Stocks continued their days-long decline today. The Dow closed down almost 1.25%. Now this.
Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get the parts and service you need fast from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Just how good is Pure Talk's current deal for unlimited wireless? Well, you might say it's the deal of your lifetime. Because right now, for just $29.95 a month, Pure Talk is offering unlimited talk, text, and data for life. Not your phone's life, your life. This is Pure Talk's top-tier plan. It comes with a crazy fast 5G network along with the 30-gig hotspot. And at just $29.95 a month, there has never been a better opportunity to lock in a ridiculously low rate for as long as you live. And save thousands and thousands of dollars along the way. This plan is normally $65 a month, but if you switch today, you will save over 50% every single month for the rest of your life. See what I mean? It really is the deal of your lifetime. Dial pound 250, say Mike Rowe. Offer ends 12/7. Some restrictions apply. Details at puretalk.com.
The Boone County, Indiana prosecutor Kent Eastwood has charged 62-year-old Kurt Anderson in the fatal shooting of a member of a cleaning crew.
Based upon the particular evidence and circumstances of this case, we have determined that Kurt Anderson's actions do not fall within the legal protections provided by the Indiana Standard Ground Law.
The woman reportedly knocked on the wrong door earlier this month. The USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier has arrived in the Caribbean and is now within striking distance of Venezuela. CBS's Charlie Daggett on what's next.
There are now 12 or 13 warships currently in this region, what the military calls Southern Command area of responsibility, and that gives the president options. And now the president says, with all of that military hardware in place, he's willing to talk to the leadership of Venezuela and President Nicolas Maduro himself.
You're listening to the CBS World News Roundup.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World's headquarters in New York, I'm Doug Krisner. Time to update top stories in market action. We had a retreat in U.S. equities today ahead of the earnings from NVIDIA. They are due after the bell on Wednesday. Also, a fair amount of anxiety tied to the release of two readings on the labor market. We'll get those numbers Thursday. So today, the S&P was down 0.9%. The Dow drops 1.2%. NASDAQ comp off about 0.8%. Now, we know the optimism surrounding AI combined with expectations for those Fed rate cuts have been the big pillars on which this bull market has been standing. Today, Fed Governor Chris Waller repeated his view that the Fed should cut its policy rate by 25 basis points next month. Here's Waller speaking in London.
My focus is on the labor market. And after months of weakening,
It is unlikely that the September jobs report later this week or any other data that's going to come out in the next few weeks is going to change my view that another cut is in order.
Fed Governor Chris Waller, who went on to say another cut would represent good risk management, and he isn't concerned about an acceleration in inflation. Shares in NVIDIA were down today, nearly 1.9%. The company, as I mentioned, will report quarterly results in less than 48 hours. We've already seen increased doubt about the sustainability of AI CapEx spending, and strong numbers from NVIDIA would go a long way to quell that uncertainty. Today, though, we learned that Peter Thiel's hedge fund, Thiel Macro, sold off its entire stake in NVIDIA last quarter. Again, shares down nearly 1.9%. This update is brought to you by IBKR. Will the American economy enter a recession by the end of the year? At IBKR Forecast Trader, the yes was recently at 6%. You can start predicting today at ibkr.com/forecast. The last day of trading for this contract, March 26th, 2026. We check markets for you throughout the day here on Bloomberg. Right now in Tokyo, Nikkei negative 0.9%. In Seoul, the Kospi down 0.6%. In Sydney, the ASX 200 is weaker by 0.8%. Global news, 24 hours a day. This is Bloomberg.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Clear skies tonight with diminution winds, low 30 to 35. Some morning sun and increasing afternoon clouds on Tuesday, high only 45 to 50. Mostly cloudy, some showers around Tuesday night, low in the middle to upper 30s, a little cooler in the suburbs. Morning clouds and becoming partly sunny on Wednesday, high again 45 to 50. I'm Scott Kaplan with your 3-day forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcast, radio, news.
This is the Podcast Spotlight Hour on Bloomberg Radio.
I'm Michelle Hussein, and you're listening to some highlights from this week's The Michelle Hussein Show podcast on Bloomberg Radio. Today, I'm speaking with former UK spy chief Richard Moore, and we're talking about values and challenges, opportunities and risks, from Russia to China and Venezuela to the United States.
I left the job after 5 years, but I certainly haven't left the world in a better place than I found it. I'm lucky that wasn't in my job description.
Richard Moore, spy, British intelligence chief, and now in his first broadcast interview since stepping down, taking us into a world of secrets.
What is the job of the chief of MI6? It's to serve the government of the day within the law, and you provide truth to power, and sometimes tell them things they really, really don't want to hear, particularly if it's a Friday afternoon.
From Bloomberg Weekend, this is the Michelle Hussein Show. I'm Michelle Hussein. When I was growing up, my parents had a friend, a British diplomat in the United Arab Emirates where we lived. This was someone they liked and respected and kept in touch with as his work took him from one place to another. Only they worried about his career. They wondered why he was never appointed a British ambassador. Until one day, we heard his name on the radio because he was being appointed as chief of Britain's MI6, the secret intelligence service with the codename C. At that point, we realized there was nothing to worry about. He had never been an ordinary diplomat. And in many ways, that story, that double life, is also the story of my guest today, Richard Moore. For nearly 4 decades, his world was espionage. He was in MI6, the agency most people know or think they know through James Bond. But his career was the real-life version. It was all about countries or groups that would wish Britain harm, and people that he could spot and recruit that he hoped would help keep it safe. Now that he's stepped down after 5 years in the job, he's been talking to me. You'll hear the story of how his career began with a tap on the shoulder, the moment he told his teenage children the truth about what he did for a living, and about values, challenges, responsibility, and risk, from Russia to China and Venezuela to the United States. Welcome. Thank you for doing this, Richard.
Until 6 weeks ago, your daily work involved reading highly classified intelligence. And I wonder if, therefore, I could start with the here and now and your perception of the world, what you see as you look around the world today that me and most people watching or listening to this might not see.
Thank you, Michelle. It's lovely to be here. As I reflect, yes, a few weeks on, I think we're in an extraordinarily contested international environment. I don't think in 38 years of being an intelligence officer and a diplomat, I've seen it less well-ordered. There's just an extraordinary number of loose ends, if you like, on the international scene, and we might talk about some of those in a bit more detail, like Ukraine or what happens next in Gaza or over Iran. There are so many of these. And unfortunately, the way in which the relationships have broken down between leading powers, particularly following Russian behavior in Ukraine, but also a difficult relationship undoubtedly between Washington and Beijing. Some of the tram lines that we were used to in the years after 1945 are not really there to manage some of this contestation. So one thing I said is I left the job after 5 years, I certainly haven't left the world in a better place than I found it. And I'm lucky that wasn't in my job description.
More contested means more dangerous, we should be clear.
There's definitely dangers in the world as we look at them, and they can suddenly loom out of the mist at you.
And the fact that you said that relationships fraying is a part of this, and you mentioned that the relationship between Washington and Beijing, that has really happened much more this year, hasn't it, with the administration? How does that play into what you've already made clear has been the case on your old agency and the CIA's perception of China, that it's the major intelligence challenge of the 21st century?
I think there's been really issues around this relationship for some time. And in particular, I think the rupture of normal diplomatic contact that happened during the pandemic. I mean, for a number of years, senior Chinese and senior Americans just didn't meet. And that's a worrying thing. You warn as an intelligence officer where you can see the dangers of things, of miscalculation, those sort of issues. You want the diplomats, you want the leaders to be talking more regularly. Now, the fact that President Trump and President Xi met recently, that's helpful. The tariffs is the current issue between them. But, I mean, there are clearly any number of rub points between the US and China and between the US allies and China.
And help me understand how you see China, because I know you've talked about China as an opportunity and a threat, and that combination is quite hard for people like me and perhaps other outsiders to get our heads around. So it just has a complexity within it that I imagine makes it hard for someone like you to help formulate policy. How is the government supposed to deal with the country as both an opportunity and a threat?
So, I mean, I think the starting point when I talk about opportunity and threat is partly because of the nature of intelligence, is that people often assume, understandably, that we're all about threats. And if you look at an organisation like MI5, that's primarily what they're there to do, is to manage the threats.
The domestic
to the
intelligence
UK, that's the
agency,
domestic
yeah.
of the UK or the FBI in America, etc. But a foreign intelligence service like my former service, MI6, is there to gather intelligence on a number of global issues. And some of that intelligence is used by ministers and senior officials to exploit opportunities as well as to manage threats.
That's what you meant by opportunity and threat, that it's an opportunity to gather intelligence and it is a...
No, it's not. It's you gather intelligence to enable your political leadership to seize opportunities, which may be upside downs, is my point. It's not all about managing threats. And with China, clearly, this is a huge and powerful country. It re-emerged onto the international scene, and its values and interests certainly don't overlap always with our own. So, you are looking at it, if you are the Prime Minister, Great Britain, or the President of the United States, about how do you manage that relationship in a way that means you secure UK interests. And for me, that means you are pretty robust at home. You are pretty robust about trying to deny and then to tackle any behavior aimed at your own country, whether that is espionage or cyber attacks, etc.
And does that happen all the time?
It's pretty relentless, yeah.
So what did you think of the collapse of the recent case against two individuals, two British men who were accused of spying? for China?
Well, what I'll say on that is very clearly, I'll repeat what I just said, which is that China is intent on gathering intelligence on the UK, and we have to recognise that. And Ken McCallum, the Director General of MI5, has spoken about that.
He said he was frustrated.
Like him, I don't think I'll be drawn on an individual case. That's for the lawyers to resolve. But it's certainly the case that they're active in this space. But,
And
you
if
know,
they're
I think
not,
you have to be a little bit careful.
if you can't take people to task for acting in that space, that was the accusation against those two men, then where does it leave you as a country? What are your levers?
What I'll say on that, Michelle, is clearly if you are spying for a foreign power against the United Kingdom and you are caught, then you should expect to receive the consequences of that action. You'll understand also why I tend to discourage politicians from being too moralistic about the issue of spying in itself. The UK has rather effective intelligence organisations, and we are actively gathering intelligence against other countries. I think where you have to be less tolerant is the sort of hybrid warfare activity that we're seeing from Russia, arson, attempted assassination. That crosses a very different line for me. But against all of these, MI5, with our help and the GCHQ's help and the help of our allies, is trying to detect and deter that type of activity.
So, just on language, just to understand how you see China, and therefore perhaps how you suggest we should see it, do you see China as an active national security threat?
I think clearly China is involved in activities which threaten our interests, and we should be very robust in pushing back against those. And they would expect us to do so, to be honest. And Beijing respects strengths in this space. So I think it is both the right thing to do and also is the practical and good thing to do. And I've always noticed when countries have had sort of set twos with China, it doesn't always impact on trade. Sometimes trade goes up. Do you remember when David Cameron met the Dalai Lama and this caused a big sort of to-do with China? As I understand it, our trade figures went up after that incident.
So stick to your values. I do want to know about how this journey of your professional life of 40 years, nearly 40 years?
Nearly 40 years to make
how it all began. So to cast your mind right back to your recruitment, how did that happen in the early 1980s?
I'm afraid I am an almost stereotypical example of what is sometimes referred to as a tap on the shoulder and what's more at Oxford. So an academic, even now I won't name who they were, but an academic approached me and they knew that I was interested in a career I was looking at the Foreign Office potentially as a route, as a career, as well as your former employer, the BBC, who rejected me without an interview, Michelle. Something I have often...
Well, I'll tell you what I'll throw back at that is that when I left university, I was not eligible to enter the service that you led because both my parents were not born in the UK. Yeah. In fact, neither of my parents were born in the UK.
No, and thank goodness we've changed that, as we have also changed the method of approaching people. But
so that doesn't happen anymore, the tap on the shoulder, Oxford or elsewhere?
No, I remember him saying, would you be interested in a career in an alternative field of foreign affairs? I must have been a very naive 20-year-old. I didn't have a clue what he meant. But one thing led to another. I got a letter.
So was that academic at Oxford, was he in the service? Was that his cover?
In those days, no. In those days, there was a very kind of informal set of what we call talent spotters, and their job was to look at bright people coming through and who they thought might be suitable for our peculiar line of work. And he picked me, and I've no idea, maybe he picked others. And occasionally I meet very senior people in public life who, it's always kind of, they come into my office and they sort of, and it's really funny how they're still very secure about it, and they look around and they check no one's there, and then they declare that they were approached, and for one reason or another they chose not to come in.
Or they didn't make the grade, maybe.
Well, for all those very distinguished people, almost certainly in the first category.
But did you hesitate once you realised what the word alternative career meant? What did you think? I know your father was a Foreign Office man, so you knew that well. But spying?
Yeah, you can imagine I was intrigued by it. I thought it'd be exciting. I didn't know very much. I mean, in those days, they told you virtually nothing. So I think coming into it, it was a bit more of a punt than it would be today. I did think about it, and because I thought about the issues which are involved in it, which are quite difficult, involving a degree of deception.
There's more from my conversation with former UK spy chief Richard Moore coming up. I'm Michelle Hussain, and this is Bloomberg.
22 years, Bloomberg surveillance has been about conversation.
Ed Morse of Hartree Partners.
What's your target on oil? I think it gets to 40 by exuberance. One crashes through that $50 number.
Jeff DeGraff of Renaissance Macro Research.
How do you define a bubble? If an asset doubles in 2 years, you're in bubble territory.
Bloomberg surveillance.
Weekday mornings at 7.
You get two of the smartest people on the planet.
Listen on Bloomberg 1130.
Watch on YouTube.
Or catch us on Bloomberg Originals.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Buying a car on the internet just got easier. Ford Motors, which opened a new headquarters building just today outside Detroit, also announced it struck a deal with Amazon.com to begin selling certified used Ford cars and trucks on the Amazon Autos portal, just like Hyundai does. On Wall Street, investors are getting jittery ahead of the release this Thursday of the shutdown-delayed September jobs report. Also, there are earnings this week from AI chipmaker NVIDIA, what that tells us about the boom in AI spending, and what earnings from big box retailers like Walmart, Home Depot, and Target will tell us about the consumer. With that, the Dow today fell 557, the NASDAQ down 193, the S&P lost 62, all down about 1%. After topping $126,000 last month, the value of Bitcoin today plunged to just over $91,000. That sell-off wiping out $600 billion in value. And just in time for the holidays, a dill pickle-flavored candle from Grillo's Pickles. Tom Busby, Bloomberg Radio.
With Fidelity Wealth Management, a dedicated advisor gets to know you and your goals to build a comprehensive plan to help grow and protect your wealth. Backed by a team of specialists, they'll analyze all your accounts, even the ones they don't manage, to keep an eye on taxes and provide proactive portfolio insights that can help you unlock your wealth's full potential. Learn more at fidelity.com/wealth. Investment minimums apply. Fidelity Broker Services, LLC, member NYC SIPC.
Pinpointing the genetic changes that predispose us to disease, identifying the roots of mental illness, treating congenital anomalies even before birth. At Boston Children's Hospital, we're investing in children's health today to ensure the well-being of adults tomorrow. As home to the world's largest pediatric research enterprise and more than 260 specialty programs, Boston Children's is where the world comes for answers. Learn more at bostonchildrens.org. Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Skies will be clear tonight. Winds will die down. Lows dropping to the lower to middle 30s. Sunshine to start today, Tuesday, then increasing clouds. High in the middle to upper 40s. Some showers around Tuesday night. Low in the middle to upper 30s. Morning clouds and becoming partly sunny on Wednesday. High again in the middle to upper 40s. I'm Scott Kaplan with your 3-day forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Jewish Communal Fund makes charitable giving easy, impactful, and tax smart. With new tax laws taking effect in 2026, now is an opportune time to open a donor-advised fund. With JCF, you can contribute appreciated assets, reduce your tax liability, and support the causes that matter most, all with personalized service and flexibility. Open your fund by December 31st to take full advantage of 2025 tax savings. Visit jcfny.org to get started.
Hey, Val. Yes, David.
Which custodian is the #1 choice for helping RIAs thrive?
A comprehensive search reveals one obvious match: Schwab Advisor Services.
Tell me about them.
My algorithm suggests they're an even better guide than me.
Go on.
With all the wealth services, technology, and support your firm needs, the difference is so obvious. It's Schwabvious.
I appreciate it, Val.
My pleasure. Dive deeper at schwabvious.com.
The Fed's top names are on Bloomberg Radio. Fed Governor Stephen Myrick.
I think that the Fed is too restrictive. The neutral is quite a ways below where current policy is.
San Francisco Fed President Mary Daly. We cannot take our eyes off inflation. Americans have endured high inflation too long. St. Louis Fed President Alberto Musalem.
It's very important that we tread with caution. As Chair Powell said, there's no risk-free path.
For the latest headlines from the Fed, listen on Bloomberg 1130 or anytime on the Bloomberg Talk podcast. Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Podcast Spotlight Hour on Bloomberg Radio.
I'm Michelle Hussein, and you're listening to some highlights from this week's The Michelle Hussein Show podcast on Bloomberg Radio. Today, I'm speaking with former UK spy chief Richard Moore, and we're talking about values and challenges, opportunities and risks, from Russia to China and Venezuela to the United States. The hesitation, I get the impression, is not so much then about living your life with secrecy, as you then had to do, from most people. The deception, as in, what did that mean?
Well, living a life of secrecy, as you put it, requires a degree of deception, because
So you're not being honest with people around you?
Yeah, some close friends, members of the wider family, are not aware of what you're doing for a living. And so, yeah, you have to be comfortable with that, along with the character traits of also, if you're desperate for recognition for what you do, this is not the right profession to go into. You've got to be satisfied with the intrinsic importance of the mission and the motivating power of that mission. You've got to be satisfied with the comradeship, the teamwork that goes with the people who are in the know. But you can't go down to the pub at the end of the week and have a brag about it to your mates.
And you have to be ready for people to see your life as a kind of boring desk job a lot of the time.
Indeed, including your children for the early part of their lives. This grey man in the Foreign Office.
When and how did you tell your children?
So it varies from family to family. It's a big decision, because once you tell them, of course, you're pulling them within that circle of knowledge and you're putting something on them. They then become complicit. So you think about it. In our case, I think we decided when our kids were in their kind of early, mid-teens, seemed the right moment to do it.
And the words you used were?
Well, it's really funny, Michelle, because here I was. I remember with my son, I can't tell the full story. Fundamentally, I should, by that stage, I'm an experienced intelligence officer. I have learned to pitch people, to put the question to them, to try and say, will you work with us? And I'm trained to do that. Completely and utterly messed it up with my own son. So the two of us, first of all, Maggie and I made the mistake of sitting there and looking slightly nervous and solemn in front of him. So, of course, I could see in his eyes he thought we were about to announce our divorce. So then I started to gabble in front of him and just sort of spewed out in the end. And he kind of looked at me, oh, God, thank God for that, and said something which is unprintable.
But Maggie, your wife, knew all along, because you've known each other since you were very young.
Yes, that's unusual. When I joined the service, albeit at 24, we were already married by then. So it was very much all of those, thinking through the issues was done, of course, chatting it through with Maggie as well. But think again of colleagues who do begin a romantic attachment, and at some point they too, because I can't just say it on the first date, at some point they too have to find, having checked in with the office, with the service, they have to find the right time to say they might not have been entirely honest in that first phase of the relationship. And that's
and then what happens if the relationship doesn't last and you've got someone out there in the wider world? Really important idea.
They do. So if you're going to split up, then do it as amicably as possible, I think would be the advice.
I want to ask about what spycraft is actually like, because, look, the time when you went into the service, you will have read John le Carre and presumably Ian Fleming, all of that kind of, the classic things people know. Was it actually like that?
So this is a terrible admission to make, but when I came to the job, I hadn't read a single Ian Fleming novel, so I'm desperately putting that right and reading my way through them. I had read le Carre. I now put Nick Heron right up there in the pantheon alongside le Carre. I think he's a brilliant writer.
Books,
yeah, the Slow Horses book. Many people will be more familiar perhaps with the TV than they are the books, but the books are fantastic. So there's just a